I'm sure we'll leave a few minutes for some of the sports-related stories next on the first hour of Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Negotiations between the U.S. and trading partners are ongoing. They're intended to avoid some of the steep tariffs President Trump announced and then paused earlier this month. As NPR's Tamara Keith reports, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is putting a positive spin on the economic uncertainty.
In a briefing, Bessent said Trump creates, quote, strategic uncertainty. But he insisted there is a process in place to navigate the president's trade war.
We have 18 important trading relationships. We'll put China to the side. 17 they are in motion.
Bessent didn't elaborate on the full list of countries, but expressed optimism.
I could see some announcements on India. I could see the contours of a deal with the Republic of Korea coming together. And then we've had substantial talks with the Japanese.
Bessent said China is under financial pressure to reduce tariffs on the United States. Tamara Keith, NPR News, the White House.
Voters in Canada have chosen Liberal Party leader Mark Carney for their next prime minister. Canadian support for the Liberal Party surged after President Trump took office. He has imposed heavy tariffs on Canada, and while insulting Canadian leaders, he has declared Canada will become America's 51st state. The remarks have infuriated Canadians. Mark Carney warns Trump's threats are not idle.
President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
Carney's main opponent and leader of the Conservative Party even lost his seat in the Canadian Parliament. He was seen as closely aligned with President Trump. A coalition of unions, nonprofits, and local jurisdictions are challenging the reorganization of the federal government. NPR's Andrea Hsu reports the plaintiffs argue the president cannot undertake such massive changes without congressional approval.
President Trump has said repeatedly that he has a mandate from the American people to eliminate waste and bloat in the federal government. But in its lawsuit, the coalition argues that the moves that Trump, along with Elon Musk, and the heads of close to 24 agencies are taking violate the separation of powers, that only Congress can approve shuttering or dramatically downsizing agencies that Congress itself created. The plaintiffs, which include the American Public Health Association, the City of Chicago, and others, have asked a federal court in San Francisco to void Trump's executive order directing agencies to conduct mass layoffs, as well as any downsizing plans agencies have already submitted. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
Illinois State Police say a deadly car crash yesterday near Springfield does not appear to be intentional. 3 children and a young adult were killed when a car plowed through a building. They were attending an after-school program. The driver has been taken to the hospital. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey speaking out against the president's policies and actions during his first 100 days in office. Healey says she's seen firsthand the impact of funding cuts and threats to higher education, which she says have negatively impacted the Massachusetts economy.
Life-saving clinical trials and treatments have been stopped. Other countries are recruiting away faculty and scientists, taking away our intellectual capital.
Healey says that in response to Trump's actions, Democratic leaders should focus on spurring economic growth, and she says it's important that they fight the president in the court system. Well, fans of the 1980s Welsh rock band The Alarm will be sad to know that founder and lead singer Mike Peters has died after a long battle with cancer. Peters formed the band in 1981, very soon after they found themselves opening for acts such as U2 and Bob Dylan. The Alarm's highest charting single in the UK is 1983's 68 Guns. Alarm's 1984 album Declaration, which contains 68 Guns, peaked at number 6 on the UK album chart. Rest in peace, Mike Peters. He was 66. Sports, the Celtics are 1 win away from the next round of the playoffs. Game 5 with the Orlando Magic tonight at the Garden. Red Sox in Canada tonight to open a series with the Blue Jays in Toronto. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Welcome to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming, thank you, at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow and Friday on May 9th. We're going to be joined by Governor Maura Healey for another edition of Ask the Mayor. And on May 13th, we'll be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. Good morning, Jim.
You're stressed, I assume, right? You got to wait 30 minutes to talk about Bill Belichick. Can you handle that? Can you wait 30 minutes?
Boy, I tell you, there's nothing like the New York Post when it comes to a story like this.
Don't give it away. That is, if you haven't read the Post, stay around.
Yeah, one of the longtime tabloids, one of the wildest ones.
We start today's show with another angle on the continuing chaos of the second Trump term, some 100 days in, and news that the president has, quote, dismissed hundreds of scientists who were required to put out the government's report on global warming impacts on the United States. Their work, this is really important, is required by law. It's known as the National Climate Assessment. It helps track how our actions as a nation affect the environment. And I hate to break it to you, but people are part of the environment. Food, water, transportation, housing, insurance, health, climate change impacts, all of it. Presumably, Trump is operating under the same thinking as his early response to the COVID pandemic. If we don't test for it, the numbers don't look as bad, so problem solved. And as with COVID, if we don't assess how our climate is changing, people will die. They already are dying. More than 200 people, I'm sure you know, died in historic flooding in North Carolina last year, which government scientists at NOAA themselves said was made more catastrophic due to climate change. And then there's the National Resources Defense Council that is saying that every single day of the first 100 days, every single day, there has been at least one climate destructive act by the Trump administration. So our number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. How do you maintain the fight, the action on climate in your own life, especially in light of our government officially taking a back seat? Or do you, or have you given up? And by the way, this National Climate Assessment is just the tip of a, let's call it a melting iceberg. There is far, far worse. Do you want to add something to this list?
Well, you know, one of the things I think is most distressing is what this is doing to young people, because they're the people that are going to be inheriting this mess. Most of us, myself included, will be 6 feet under before the worst of this gets here. But eco-distress, eco-anxiety, eco-grief, these are some of the terms psychologists are using for the real depression that a lot of young people are experiencing, because, you know, the stock market is probably going to come back, and maybe Trump will not be able to do that much damage to A, B, C, D that won't be fixable. But this is not fixable. We talked all the time about how 2030 was a turning point to avoid the worst of the disasters. Well, that's not going to happen now because Donald Trump is the president. I think that's what's so upsetting about it. And just a couple of little.
Don't leave the thing, because I'm so glad you started with that. This climate trauma, or this eco, it not only affects people who you think it would affect, sort of the under 25 crowd, but the stories we read last night and this morning suggest preschoolers are suffering anxiety from what they read and hear about climate change.
They were talking about, I find this incredible, but this one, this psychiatrist talks about children as young as 3 who hear about, animals that they are like teddy bears or polar bears or things that are getting extinguished, or animals that they love getting killed in fires, and that certainly happened in the wildfires in California. But Trump is drill, and he's undermining wind farms, and that it means a lot to people down on Cape Cod who are watching the National Seashore shrink the beach there every single year. But listen to this. Lee Zeldin is the head of the EPA. He at least admits that climate change is real, but it doesn't seem to matter to what he's doing. In a blitz of announcements, and this is a story from Newsweek, he undermined 31 regulations on greenhouse gas, toxic air pollution, clean water protections, waste from fossil fuel extinction. Listen to this. In something that was strikingly illegal, but he did it nonetheless, he froze the bank accounts used by several climate finance groups, awarded billions of dollars by Congress already to fight climate change, and he's frozen those accounts so they can't use the money. And one more thing, we also we depend a lot in bad weather on the National Weather Service, NOAA. They manage the nation's marine fisheries as well. Well, listen to what the former NOAA administrator said. with no apparent objective other than ruining lives and creating chaos, the Trump administration has undone decades of progress in our nation's ability to predict weather, manage fisheries, and ensure the safety of our citizens and their property. So I think the thing that's so scary is that we've seen the wildfires in California, we've seen the hurricanes, we've seen floods in places like Montpelier, Vermont, which you never thought that would happen, in Asheville, North Carolina, that pristine little place that was supposed to be safe from climate change. We've seen those places impacted. So when you're a young person and you're buying a home, you have to think about where it is in relation to brooks or rivers, and you have to think, how long will you be able to even live in this home? Because I think your sense of place now and your sense of permanence, people die, people get sick, but places kind of remain. That's gone, right? How long is this Back Bay that we're at every day? How much longer is this going to be here? I mean, it's been here for hundreds of years, and as everybody knows, if Hurricane Sandy had hit Boston instead of New York.
They said an 8-degree shift in the path of Hurricane Sandy.
We would have been flooded right up to Fenway Park, and I would argue that probably the most beautiful part of Boston, or certainly one of the most beautiful parts of Boston, is the Back Bay where we are right now.
So can I add a little good news to this, particularly since it runs contrary to my position up until all this polling for the 100-day mark of the last 4 or 5 days, is the people get it. Washington Post, ABC News poll. Do you support cutting back environmental regulations on oil and gas drilling that the Trump administration is doing? Only 37% support, 61% oppose, which is, to me, really heartening. That's landslide kind of numbers, 61 to 37. One more piece of bad news. Well, actually, I don't know if it's bad news yet. It could be bad news. Then we'll get to your calls and texts at 877-301-8970. How are you dealing with this relentless bad news on the environment? And is it defeating you in any way? How are your kids dealing? And if you're young, how are you dealing with this? There was supposed to be what was being called the Earth Day Massacre. I don't know if I mentioned this to you when I got a call from a nonprofit leader in town. What was believed to have been happening on Earth Day, didn't happen yet, is that the Trump administration was going to request the Internal Revenue Service change the definition it's called 501c3, that's a provision in the Internal Revenue Code that deals with nonprofit organizations, to eliminate climate as subject matter for an organization to be able to have nonprofit status, which would essentially, and this is not hyperbolic, destroy virtually every climate-focused organization in America. They didn't do it, but they didn't say they're not going to do it. It just didn't happen on Earth Day. 877-301-8970.
You have to say to yourself, why? Okay, you get donations from Exxon, you get donations.
He's owned by the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, but I mean, he's made so much money on his memes, for God's sakes. You say to yourself, everybody knows this is happening. I mean, there are some people that are trying to deny it, but they're fewer and farther between. Why would you do this? Why would you want to block a wind farm on Cape Cod that's going to help people with their electric?
Why would you deport citizens? Why would you refuse to bring back somebody you admit that you wrongly deported to El Salvador? Why would you cut funding for higher education? Why would you attack diversity in our country?
Okay.
Because this is who he is.
Okay, this is who he is.
877-301-8970. Casey and Stoneham, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. This is my second time calling you about climate change.
Great.
And I promised last time that I was going to try to improve my climate footprint by installing solar panels, driving an electric car, and I've gone ahead and done that.
Good.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
It's a stretch financially. I'm only on one income, but I have the privilege of being a homeowner, so I can do some of these things. And I added electric climate to my house, an electric oven. So I'm trying to do what I can.
I think it's great. I think that is great. You're acting almost defensive, like you're not doing enough.
Yeah,
I think it's
that's
fabulous
fantastic.
That you're
How do you like
acting.
the solar panels? Have you noticed much of a difference yet in your bill?
No, I still pay Eversource a lot of money.
Oh, that's too bad.
But I have noticed a good bit of production. It's just the winter I'm not producing as much.
Well, that's
solar,
true.
So
That's
it's
true.
still expensive. but I'm not using heating oil anymore. So there's a trade-off.
Casey, thanks for
That
calling
is
again.
very impressive.
People should go. I'm sure everybody knows about this, but I didn't know about it until about a year or so ago. Go to Mass Save.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of wonderful programs that are free or they're tax credits. Insulation for my house, by the way, was totally free.
Yeah, that's
not
pretty
a penny.
good.
They insulated the whole damn house.
That's pretty good.
Which is pretty incredible. Check them out in Mass Save. 877-301-8970. When you talk about irreversible things, I mean, not only are you obviously right about the climate, there's only so much you can do when the damage has been done. You just try to mitigate it after the fact. The damage to young people's psyches also doesn't just go away. You don't just have a midterm election where Democrats arguably win the House of Representatives and young people who've been caused great distress by this all of a sudden are fine. This is stuff that stays
because like
with
I said
you.
before, you think, okay, you knew there were earthquakes in California. California's built buildings to withstand a lot of earthquakes, so they can withstand pretty tough ones. But you kind of know that. You sort of know where there's hurricanes. Florida has a lot of hurricanes. But you can sort of think about where you're going to be. You used to be able to think about where you're going to be safe from this, and that's not true anymore. I think that's what's really scary. And the other thing is home insurance costs. I mean, some people predict the home insurance industry is going to go under because they just can't afford these massive disasters. I mean, look what's happening in California. They can't pay those people to rebuild those houses. Down in Florida, you have to get insurance through the state, and it's not nearly enough to cover your home.
Well, Juliet Kayyem has talked to us about these state sort of backup plans, but when federal money is being cut, like we discussed with Evan Horowitz yesterday,
That's a great point.
The state's going to have to decide what it can afford and what it can't afford, and this may have to go, so don't count on it. 877-301-8970. Ron in Seabrook. Welcome, Ron.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, I would like to put in a plug and recommend to everybody that they make thrift stores part of their shopping experience.
Explain why.
You know, they do wonderful things with the money, most of them. They afford a few jobs, a lot of volunteers. That's what I do. I volunteer on an afternoon a week or two.
Good for
and
you.
Very good quality items are in there. Some of them are of a better quality than a lot of people will go out and buy for themselves. But the point is that something brand new has not been manufactured for that particular purchase. And if we can make better use of used stuff,
idea.
You know, we do better for the environment.
Ron, that's excellent. Thank you. And the volunteering part of that is good, too. Thanks for the call. You know, can we get back to this National Climate Assessment thing? I mentioned in the opening to this segment that it's required by law, meaning Congress passed it. Do you think Congress, you know, even if they don't believe the Republicans control the House and the Senate, they don't believe in anything. Well, I don't know what they believe in. They believe in not crossing Trump because they're scared of him. Don't you think the leaders would be concerned about their authority being eroded, whether it's by executive orders in well, this is a perfect one, an executive order or executive action dismissing everybody working on the National Climate Assessment means they can't comply with the law that you, Congress, passed. They don't give a damn about that either.
I don't know. I don't know what these Republicans in Congress are thinking, but the reason this is such a big deal, this climate assessment, the climate assessment, is because it helps people plan for what they're going to do. You know, how they're going to
businesses, governments, everything. Yeah,
exactly. It's kind of a planning tool. It was due to come out in 2028. I guess they do them every 5 years. So if as this person says in the story, you know, if you care about food or water or transportation or insurance or your health, you know, this is what the climate change report will help you deal with. And of course, they're getting anything to do with climate justice, because of course that's too DEI for them. The climate justice issues that predominantly are in inner city communities that are mostly people of color.
You know, we also left out of this.
What?
I've mentioned this a few times, but it's one of my favorites of early Trump. That when he got those 9 law firms, which we're going to talk about at noon, to donate close to $1 billion in free legal services to causes that Trump loves. The first announcement, at least that I heard, about what Trump would have them do is represent coal companies, the dirtiest of fuel. I know Marjorie's going to say clean coal, which is clean coal. That is how he says it.
That's how he says it.
But it's not clean. It's as dirty as it gets. And those law firms that capitulated in the face of the extortionist demands of the President of the United States, rather than fight like a lot of law firms did, they're going to represent coal companies, which means a dirtier air for all of us. 877-301-8970.
See, the horrible story was at the Globe or the Times today. They had the horrible story about how the plastic stuff is all killing us all. That was great, causing all these cancers. That was encouraging.
What do you think is going to get us first? If you have to, write your own obituary.
Is it going to be fire or water?
Or plastic.
Or plastic. That's right. I don't know.
It's not funny. Why did I say that?
I don't know. And we're, you notice too. You just see it in your own life. The flowers coming up much earlier than they usually do.
Much earlier.
And lasting much longer. That's one good thing, that the flowers will last later in September and October. But I don't think it's worth the price.
There'll be no humans to look at them. It's the only issue.
Kathy from Providence, thank you for calling.
Hello, Kathy in Providence.
Hi, guys. I know you from Silent Spring, but I'm really calling you as a photographer today.
Oh,
Hi,
great.
I've been photographing a community in southern Rhode Island called Roy Carpenter's Beach for the last 20 years. I didn't start out to do a documentary, but it's turned into that, and what it's documenting is the coastline moving inward. We've lost about, depending on what maps you look at and what time period, 100 to 200 feet of their shoreline, and they've moved the general store 3 times.
Wow.
And when I go there, when I started going there, the head of the residency, or the Residents Association, told me that I was the voice of doom. And that stopped in 2011 when he was part of the cleanup crew for the hurricane that came through that year.
Hey, Kathy, we apparently have some of your photographs, which I believe
we do.
We're going to put up. Do you mind? Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
Can you give us your?
See these, Kathy, or not? You're on the phone.
Can you give us your whole name if people want to check out your work, Kathy, if you're willing?
Yeah, it's Kathy Florsheim.
Florsheim.
And the website is Kathy Florsheim Photography. And those photographs, I've been photographing since those were put up. I have a show of the last 20 years worth, which is going to open at the Wells Reserve in Wells, Maine on the 24th of July. And later today, I'll go up to my studio and argue with myself about the artist.
Hey, Kathy, stay on hold. And if you give information to one of our producers, we'll make sure we remind people about your show as it approaches. Kathy, thank you for your work and for your call. By the way, she mentioned that we met at Silent Spring. Silent Spring is a wonderful organization Marjorie and I have done work with in Newton that talks about household things,
shampoos,
products,
deodorants,
and the cancer
cleaners.
risk from those proposals. They do spectacular work. Check them out, Silent Spring.
Between those chemicals and breast cancer, they're focused primarily on breast cancer, and it's really kind of frightening when you realize how many of those chemicals that we all use. Paul from Wellesley, thank you for calling.
Hello, Paul.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning to you, too.
First of all, I'm really glad you're talking about this, because this, to my mind, is the overriding issue, and it has been almost ignored in recent discourse. But I also wanted to mention, so this troubles me a huge amount, because the destruction of the climate is going to impact all of us going forward. But there are a couple things I wanted to mention. The first of all, the things that we can do to at least to try to begin addressing this and bringing it back into focus. First of all, I mentioned in a call earlier that there are the idea of state compacts, and I asked my state rep, Alice Peisch, about this, and she says that there is already an alliance being formed of states to band together to restore some of the environmental protections that are being erased by the administration. Mm-hmm. I also want to mention another thing we can do is I did a little Google search, and I found that there's some organization, I'm sorry I can't recall the name of it, but I'm sure it could be found by others, that is doing phone banking in favor of the wind farms. I think the wind farms are the path to the future, and one of the things that the administration is doing is they're trying to erase expansion of the offshore wind farms, one of which apparently would be able to power 400,000 homes. So this kind of advancement of alternative electric sources is something that we can push for. I mean, obviously, the only thing we've got is the Democratic minority in the House. But if we push on them, I'm also very much hoping that, given the protests and the apparent public sentiment that's critical of what the administration is doing, that wave of opposition may be enough to persuade some representatives in swing districts, of which there are a reasonable number, that the phone banking might be able to bring those people into a position where they could stand behind it.
Paul, thank you for your thoughts. By the way, two other things people can do in addition to trying to find that wind farm calling thing, and Trump does not believe in wind farms, trying to actually undo some of the permitting that has already been done.
Yeah, one is too far along down the Cape. The second one is in jeopardy because of permitting.
Wind? I'm not sure which it is.
I forget which name is.
But can I just say
and by the way, there's a lot of jobs associated with that in places like New Bedford and Fall River that could use the jobs.
There are two organizations that Bill McKibben was involved in the founding, 350.org and thirdact.org, that are worth investigating too, if you think you'll do better in an organized kind of setting. By the way, that caller just mentioned the fact that there is far too little coverage of this. When we asked Jamie this morning, to find information in that 5 or 6 polls that were done, major polls around the 100 days, we could only find one that included a climate question, the Washington Post ABC News poll that I read a minute ago, and which is really troubling, which means major news sources are minimizing that as an issue too.
We are awful. When you read about these disasters, which are linked to climate change, half the time they never say they have anything to do with climate change.
Or it's way down
look
in
into
the
the
story.
local news with the meteorologists.
Right.
They don't mention it enough. Meteorologists were climate change deniers until quite recently, by the way. They're one of the worst.
They're better.
They're better, but they're not where they should be. But this Washington Post poll did show that 6 in 10 people are very concerned about climate. So it's not nobody. And by the way, we have some texts here. Mothers Out Front says Dave from West Roxbury is a very effective grassroots organization that's pushed and won significant legislation in Massachusetts. And this is a texter who says, I can't tell you of all the ways that Trump is just negatively impacting my mental health and state of the world. I'm increasing and continuing my environmental efforts, part of a green team at my church, encouraging people to live more sustainably and putting forth material at a spring fair this weekend. But the point this person was making was that the toll on your mental health of worrying about these kinds of things. And this thing about young people, a survey in The Lancet talked to 10,000 people between the ages of 16 and 25 in 10 different countries. And 60% of them extremely worried, 85% at least moderately concerned, more than 45% said their fears about the climate affect their daily functioning because they are feeling anxiety about this.
We got to take a break.
Anyway, you're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We're talking about climate change. Drill, drill, drill is sort of a isn't sort of, it is a slogan of Donald Trump. How are you feeling about the climate being made made worse during his administration? 877-301-89.7.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, the movie Ethos. The ultimate hangout film is sure to be a classic. Set in small-town New England, 2 amateur baseball teams say farewell to a beloved playing field over a remarkable game. Director Carson Lund joins me to talk about his feature directorial debut. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, ranked the #1 public university in New England by U.S. News and World Report. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library and streaming youtube.com/GBH News. And we're talking about the climate 100 days under Donald Trump. Getting your reactions. Are you dispirited by all this? Have you stopped doing what you've been doing before? Or is your activity sort of hyped up because, you know, it's got to be done on a local level? The number is 877-301-8970.
Let's go to Martina in North Andover. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Martina.
Oh, hi. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for taking my call. On the plastics and the use of, I used to teach a being environmentalist class at my daughter's school.
Oh.
3.5.
Oh. Did we lose you?
We seem to have lost Martina.
Martina, call back or we'll re-find you. Or well, she's gone. Call us back, 877-301-8970.
Here's Charlene from New Hampshire. Hello. In 2019, when I watched the movie Don't Look Up, remember that one? That was when the asteroid was coming toward Earth. I found it to be a wild and crazy sci-fi feature. Today, it feels like my reality. Where are our heroes? Trump and his cronies are stuffing their pockets with massive amounts of cash and have no respect for saving our planet or their people. Maybe they plan to jet off to another planet, like in the movie, or go to Mars with Elon Musk, who's planning on going with his 14 children. Some now estimate he's got 100 children. I don't know how many of them will fit on the spaceship. He'll have to do
what's
triage.
heartening? Did you see, we've been talking about polling numbers for Trump and his policies, almost all of which, not almost all of which, all of which, including even immigration, deportation things, are below 50%, some significantly below, like the economy, how he's handling the economy, tariffs, etc. Do you see Musk's approval rating? 33%.
Yeah, people don't like him.
And while he's sort of on his way out of town, he's so connected to these Doge efforts, which please don't call and say it's about efficiency and that sort of thing. It's nothing like that. That's a heartening sign and may cause some of that to slow down as well.
You know, it's amazing when I look at the texts, and these are people that obviously are listening to the show, talking about solar and wind or scam. There is no climate change issue.
They don't believe that. I'm sorry. They don't believe it. It's one thing to say there is climate change, but the economy is more important or whatever. Nobody is dumb enough in 2025. That includes Donald Trump to believe that climate change is not an issue.
Some are claiming that this is all, climate hysteria.
Yeah.
Climate hysteria.
Okay, Martina's back.
That's one of the reasons why they don't want, like the National Weather Service, by the way, because the Trump administration says that reporting on these weather disasters leads to climate panic, and they don't want that.
Well, it's sort of like I said in the opening of the whole discussion here. Remember what he said about testing? He said we're doing too much testing. And the reason was the more we test, the more we find out that COVID's a problem. If we don't test, we won't know there's a problem. Same situation there.
And he tries to pretend that the climate, those disasters with the wildfires have nothing to do with anything except better maintenance of the forest. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have good maintenance of the forest. It doesn't mean that isn't important. But it's the combination of the drought, the heat. In California's case, right, we had that huge, remember with all the flooding going on, so it caused all the brush to grow really high. Then you had the drought, then you had the high temperatures, then you had the astronomically unusually high Santa Ana winds. I mean, it's all linked to climate, but he keeps denying it. And I'm telling you, Jim, people are texting us saying this is all baloney.
Do you ever think of the image where lying in bed, about to go to sleep, and you think of the image of Donald Trump swimming into Mar-a-Lago? Is that haven't appealed to anybody? I'm not wishing it on him.
I think a lot of people have thought about Mar-a-Lago.
Martina is back. Martina in North Andover. I'm sorry we lost you. Welcome back. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
So it was in relation to the plastics and the use of, or, all of the garbage that we all see strewn about 95, 128, 93, 114, 485, you name it.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. I had mentioned that I had taught to be an environmentalist class at my daughter's middle school, how much middle schoolers cared about the environment. Yet we do not have within the state or within any of the states a litter campaign, which is a basic pretty much for any community. We can reduce plastics. We can eliminate single-use plastics now. So I called my local town to ask if we could begin a campaign, do not litter, this land is your land, do not trash it, crickets. I called the Attorney General's office, I called the Mayor's office, So my question, is where's the leadership? We need these things now, and we need somebody leading them.
Well, Martina, let me just say, as Maura Healey has talked about quite a bit, and we had the woman on the show, she is the first, I believe, governor in the United States to have a climate person. I don't know if she likes being called climate czar. At a cabinet level position. So she has the ability. Can you remind me of her name, Jamie, if you don't mind? So I'm not being disrespectful here. It just slipped my mind for a second. And her job is to essentially look into every single portion of the government that Maura Healey presides over to see what the climate impact of their work is, which I think is a really valuable thing to be going on, Martina. So
and Mayor Wu is according
to Bill McKibben, the best mayor on the environment in America.
So there is some leadership going on, and there's also a lot of cities and towns are starting composting. Boston does it.
That's you know how to compost?
I have a compost. They come and pick
how
up.
to do it?
No, they come and pick it up for me.
No, I didn't mean you had to go compost there yourself. Do you know what to put in there?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
What?
It's food. You put in leftover food.
You do?
And it's amazing how much food you waste every single saute
You really
week.
do it?
I do it because it's so easy.
Good for you. That's great.
And not only that, they collect your food and your like plant scraps and all that kind of stuff every single week.
Yeah.
And then they have things for textiles.
Yeah.
They have things for electronics.
I know that.
They have things for plastic and styrofoam.
Mm-hmm.
The one we use is Black Earth composting. I think it's great.
One of our colleagues says to use the composter, you have to have any food left over, which is an issue in my house. By the way, the name is Melissa Hoffer. We had her on the show. We should have her on again. She's Massachusetts.
But by the way,
I think America's first ever cabinet level climate chief.
Food in landfills is a huge problem for greenhouse
gases.
gases. So it's a big deal to compost your food. And then you can buy the compost back if you want at the end of the year and put it on your garden.
Oh.
Yeah. Makes me feel very natural, like a natural woman, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, we are done with this. Up for a quick break from
Aretha
all this.
Franklin
We're going to talk.
Was singing about you, I think. Margie, if I remember
absolutely.
correctly.
Up next, NBC Sports' Trenny Casey is next with even more news on Bill Belichick. We just can't get enough. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
It's like a
live
child.
for the Bill Belichick. He's in love, Jim. He is in love.
He is.
Live from the Boston
Creative
Public
Muse.
Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Big news events develop rapidly every day, but there are also stories of discovery, humor, and grace. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Every weekday, the world brings you important global stories and a strong dose of shared humanity.
Listen every weekday to The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Bernadine Sung Megason with Compass Real Estate, serving buyers and sellers throughout Greater Boston. Learn more at homesbybernadine.com. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering dynamic short programs tailored for mid-career professionals looking to build expertise in innovation, leadership, and technology. Details at executive.mit.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Ordinarily, I would do programming announcements. We don't have any time for that because Marjorie has got to get to the story of the century. That would, of course, be Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson, and she'll be doing it, and I'll participate to some degree, with Sports Authority Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Hello, Trenny.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Okay, so
by the way, we lost about half of our audience yesterday. Let's see if we can lose the other half today.
They were just appalled that
they were
we would be discussing something as low rent as Bill Belichick.
So let's do it again.
We're going to do it again because we're going to keep talking about Bill Belichick this in a low rent way about him and his girlfriend because
Creative Muse.
The place that can never be beaten on this kind of story, maybe except for the National Enquirer, is the New York Post.
The New York
which
Post.
Which has delved deep into this situation, and they're very concerned that the relationship with Jordan Hudson, that she herself is a runaway train, as far as Bill Belichick is concerned, and this is a dangerous situation for the coach.
Wait, you left out the most important. There's
What's
a
the most important?
Massachusetts, the dreaded local angle, as you always tell me.
Oh, what's the dreaded local
The
angle,
dreaded
Jim?
local
That her
angle
mom owns
is-
the sex toy shop on
Yeah.
Provincetown?
The
By the way,
sex
it is
toys.
That was a
not-
really interesting, fun
Yeah.
little nugget that
She
came
does
out
not
of
own
that.
it. I looked it up on
Oh, she
LinkedIn.
just,
She's
like-
the business manager
okay.
of Toys of Eros
Now,
on Commercial
okay, Toys
Street.
of Eros.
Which,
now,
listen, hey, I'm not against any of that kind of
Nope.
stuff, so good for you.
well,
good for you.
Jim knows a lot about it.
I do not.
Your store was next door to it.
It was
wasn't
not
your
next
store-
door. It was on the same street. Thank you. It was not next door. It's on the same street.
Okay.
Let's move on.
So what do you
I've
think of
seen
the-
it.
You've seen it.
Just when you
Yes.
thought no more salacious details could come out, you had to dig deep in this New York Post article, but I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You just told us you actually saw this as it was happening Sunday morning.
So, I mean, obviously, I have a weekly segment on NPR, so I'm a bit of a nerd. I love news, and I watch CBS Sunday Morning every Sunday. I DVR it, I sit
great
down, I have
show.
my coffee, and I just relax and watch it. And I'm watching, and I see this Bill Belichick story come up, and the first thing I think is, who told you to wear that sweatshirt? It was like this ratty old navy, and I don't mean the color. I mean, it was a color navy, but it was like the school navy, the branch of the military, and it had like a big hole in it, a huge hole. And so I take a picture. I'm watching it, and I sent it to my two producers, and I was like, "Way to get dressed up for the interview, Bill." Thinking that would be like the biggest salacious takeaway from this fluff piece that CBS is doing on Bill Belichick, because he has a book coming out called The Art of Winning. I think it comes out in a week or two. And so I'm just assuming, they're the home publishing company, yada, yada, yada. He'll do some fluffy questions about, being the greatest coach of all time. And then all of a sudden it turned, the last 2 minutes are some of the best 2 minutes in television. I've watched it a long time.
I would agree.
So it flips, and Tony asks him, I can't pronounce, how do you say his last name?
I think it's the Copley. We have the sound.
Tony
Actually,
DeCoppel.
before
Okay,
let's play the sound.
let's play the sound.
So Jordan Hudson, who is Belichick's girlfriend, she's in the room during the CBS interview.
Oh, you're going right for this, because I was going to say the part about Robert Kraft.
Oh, do
to
it.
me is
Go
where
ahead.
it
You
turned.
go there first.
So
Yeah.
so he asks him. So Bill Belichick writes this entire book on the art of winning and the lessons he has learned from the people around him about how to be successful. Nowhere in the book is there a single mention of Robert Kraft, not even in the acknowledgments.
That is incredible.
Which is incredible. And then so the reporter asks him about it, and he says, correct. That's all he says, because it's Bill Belichick. And then he pushes him on it. And I was, he pushed him. This isn't a reporter who just took his answer at face value. And he said, but you didn't learn anything from him? And he said it was about my experiences and the things I experienced with the people around me who taught me about success. And I was like, oh, that's a low dig. And then he goes in and asks him about how Robert Kraft said he was fired on a radio show.
Mutual decision.
And he goes, no, it was a mutual agreement. So you kind of see this this dynamic between Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, where Bill Belichick's trying to still keep up this ruse that he was, it was a mutually agreed upon parting of ways, when we all know he was fired. They fired Bill Belichick. And then just when I was like, wow, I can't believe that he went there, he went here.
So here it is. Again, Jordan Hudson, the girlfriend, is sitting in the room during the entire CBS interview. And the first voice you'll hear is hers when the reporter asks Belichick about how the two of them met. Listen carefully.
Not talking about this.
No.
No.
Okay, so she says we're not talking about this. She's not in the interview, by the way.
Nah.
The reporter says no, and Hudson says no. Now, Jimmy Kimmel, it's in the Globe today. Jimmy Kimmel did a bit on this last night.
Oh, did he?
And Jimmy Kimmel mentions that he was asked, Belichick was how you met. And when she interrupted, Kimmel's response was, I'm guessing it wasn't in a church. So I guess he's doubting the we met on a plane story.
Well, the interviewer, this guy, Ducopel, if they're saying it correctly, said
Who, by the way, is married to Katie Tur.
That's right.
Yeah, she's great.
Jordan was a constant presence during our interview. The headline in the New York Post is, alarmed by CBS disaster, Belichick insiders say girlfriend Jordan Hudson is a runaway train. They called it an embarrassing interview, clear who wears the pants in the romance. They called it alarming. And there was kind of a sense that she's running everything and he's taking orders.
Well, listen, and listen, we laugh and we can, whether or not it's right to debate the merits of the relationship or the intentions of it, the reasoning behind why two people who are 48 or 49 years apart in age would
49.
be...
Let's just call
49,
it 50.
49 years apart in age. My boyfriend still hasn't been born yet. Waiting. Can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait I hope his name's like Wyatt or something. That'll be so fun. So fun. Sorry, I think I'm reading a book with a Wyatt in it. Whatever. We can talk about like the more salacious aspect of it, but this is something that has stuck out to me from the beginning, which is Bill Belichick is someone who has always had complete control over the narrative.
Right.
Bill Belichick has always had complete control over his image, and it's been a very carefully crafted image. And we were talking about this yesterday, sort of off the air in my office, of how when he was dating Linda Holliday, who, by the way, is a peer, it's the same age, but she's also very active on social media. She has young daughters. She often posted on Instagram pictures of them at galas and events and on Nantucket or at the games. But it was all a very controlled, image conscious type of way of putting him out there and sort of humanizing Bill Belichick. What to me, and he doesn't like attention. Like that's something that's not really Bill Belichick. Like, he obviously likes attention. He's a celebrity, but only to a certain extent.
Right.
What has really stuck out to me about this relationship and what's happening is it feels like he is not controlling anything of what's happening. Like the fact that a month ago she was posting pictures of them, like, it's like something you do with like your little kid, right? You lay on your back and you put your little like 4-year-old on your feet and play baby airplane. Well, they're doing that on the beach and it's all over Instagram, and it's not just all over Instagram. Then it's on the New York Post and it's in the Boston Globe, and it's everywhere and everyone's talking about it. So it does, right or wrong, it makes me wonder about Bill Belichick's faculties. Are they all there? Is he in some... he is 73 years old. Is he being taken advantage of by someone who sees sort of an opening?
According to the New York Post, and by the way, Hudson is involved in all his emails. She's CC'd in all the emails. She is the chief operating officer of Belichick Productions.
By the way, Belichick Productions, I think that people have tried to dig into this Belichick Productions.
Is there such a thing?
I don't believe that there's like an LLC. I don't think there's anything. Quite frankly, it sounds kind of made up.
Well, they quote one of these insiders who calls Jordan a runaway train and say, this guy Belichick is known for being such a strong voice and in many ways autocratic. Yet here he is becoming mush in her hands, letting her direct everything, and she is so much younger, so inexperienced, so lacking in perspective and professionalism. However, a woman who competed against Hudson, who was first runner-up in the 2024 Miss Maine USA contest. She's running again this year, I guess, because she didn't win. She's going to run again. Says that the former Bridgewater State cheerleader is very ambitious. Said the source, I'm sure she could probably run a football team easily and compete in high heels and run a business.
Okay, so we're going to end this with this.
I'm sure that other 24-year-old really knows what it takes. But
Cambridge
Trevi has more to say.
A Cambridge resident clutching their pearls, carrying a Whole Foods tote bag. That's how the resident describes him or herself. It's texted. Last week it was Karen Reed. Today it's Bill Belichick. Very disturbed. Your show has turned into Access Hollywood. Okay, now you may conclude your comments.
Well, I will say, so I was talking to a friend of mine who works in sports media yesterday. We were chatting on the phone. We were talking about this because this is all anyone in sports is talking about right now. And she actually had a pretty astute sort of thought on this, that maybe it's not that he's sort of like literally losing his mind, or maybe on the precipice of something terrible like Alzheimer's or dementia. But she drew a parallel to Aaron Rodgers and said, when he lost, when the Packers drafted Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers kind of went off the deep end because he could see the end of his reign, right? He could see the end of what was this illustrious career. And she said, as soon as Bill Belichick was fired by the Patriots, that's when this became public. That's when all of this behavior shifted. Like when the only thing you've ever known has been taken from you, people react in many different ways, and this just sort of seems like his reaction to maybe the first time in his life he's ever really, other than like the Cleveland Browns job, really failed at something. This is just a very weird psychological way of him coping and dealing with it. But whatever's happening, if I'm the University of North Carolina, which, by the way, is a public institution, so taxpayers are paying for Bill Belichick's salary,
right?
At least a part of it. Like this is supposed to be a leader of young men, and let's imagine
and young women in this case.
Yeah, and let's
Exactly.
imagine for a second that you have football players who are running around and posting things that they shouldn't on social media, doing interviews, saying things that. How do you then step in front of them and say this is not appropriate behavior for young men who are in the spotlight? When you're doing the same thing, like it really dampens his message, and I wonder how much it'll dampen his legacy. Like I can't imagine he'll ever coach in the NFL anymore. Like who wants to bring this, into an NFL organization? This would be all anyone is talking about. His career, essentially, I think, in the NFL is over.
So why don't you take, Marjorie,
it was over
I don't
before,
know,
but
why
it's
don't
really
you
over
take
now.
like an hour or two and respond to what Trenny had to say? Go
No,
ahead.
Jim is upset because his neighbors in Cambridge don't like him talking about this. He's
They're
above the
picketing
fray.
my house
I get
as
it.
we speak.
Listen, I understand. It's a weird topic to discuss someone else's relationship status, right? But I think what we're talking about more is what's happening, the change in someone who's great, and also. We talk about, you just spent like 40 minutes talking about the complete decline of the earth. Can't we have a little fun,
Exactly.
people? Don't you want like a little bit of some like gossipy, fun sports stuff in your day?
And the other thing is we wouldn't even know about this if they weren't running around getting interviews and she wasn't posting these pictures every 2 seconds
If you don't
about their
want
life.
people to know
And I
about
often
your
wonder,
relationship,
if
Instagram.
Belichick, who says he doesn't spend much time on social media, even sees half this stuff. I mean, she's posting it. I'm not even sure he knows.
Well,
it's
he
being-
might want to check his account more often.
Okay, so tell us about, changing topics here, tell us about this quarterback Quinn Evers losing all this money.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So this is, I forget where he went to school, because quite honestly, it's like
Texas,
that's right. He transferred into Texas. This is a kid who decided to declare for the NFL draft, and he was drafted, I believe, in the 5th or the 6th round.
Seventh, I think.
Seventh round?
Way near the end.
It was near the end. It was it was the third day. Like, listen, guys who are drafted on the third day, the guaranteed money is very little. You're not even
slotted
guaranteed
in at a particular amount.
You're not even guaranteed to make a lot. You're not even guaranteed to make a roster, let alone make money.
Yeah.
Had he stayed in college, he had an NIL transfer portal deal for $8 million. So by
For 1 year.
for 1 year, so by going to the NFL, where he'll probably make, I think they said, an average annual value salary of around $800,000, like he's basically forfeiting like $7.6 or $7.2 million a year to play in the NFL, which raises an interesting question. I don't know if we're going to talk about Shedeur Sanders, but someone did the math on Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders is the son of Deion Sanders, who's the quarterback at Colorado. Some people had him going as early as number 3 overall in the draft, and he fell to the 5th round, the second quarterback that the Cleveland Browns took. If he would have been drafted number 3 overall, I think like the total package of his rookie contract would have been $47 million. If he would have been drafted the first slot in the second round, it would have been $11 million. By being drafted in the 5th round, he lost like tens of millions of dollars, which prompted some people in sports media, I think, to make a really interesting case for why. So if you declare for the draft, you cannot go back to college football, which made sense back in the day because that meant you hired agents, you would get free things, but now they pay college players. If you aren't drafted or you're not drafted high enough, this guy thinks that you should sue the NCAA. They should be suing the NCAA to go back to college. Because you should have the option, because baseball players have the option. If you're drafted in high school, but you don't slot high enough, you can go to college and then try to redraft yourself. So why now that there's money involved and there shouldn't be any back and forth, why shouldn't these guys test the waters and then go back?
You're not addressing the critical issue with either Sanders or Ewers. What do they both think about the Belichick situation? By the way, an anonymous texter has said, we need a whole special GBH podcast series, and they actually proposed the title. Here it is. We're not talking about this, the Jordan Hudson story. That is a fabulous
But she is running
title.
for Miss Maine again. It's in the fall, I think.
Miss Maine. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so we'll see how she does
We'll be there.
the second time around.
Remote
Here's my
broadcast.
question, though. Why would this guy give up that guaranteed $7 or $8 million to go to the NFL draft?
Because he didn't know he was going to be drafted so late in the thing.
But he should have. Like, Shedeur Sanders is different, right? Like, Shedeur Sanders, most people thought if he fell, he would fall to the beginning of the second round, not to the 5th round. This other guy, I've never even heard of this guy's name until you sent me. Like, this quarterback draft class is not very good. And he had an option to leave Texas because Arch Manning is going to be the son of Peyton.
No, he's not Peyton. He's one of the. He's like the nephew.
He's like their third brother's kid.
Oh, okay.
The one that
Who doesn't play
football professionally. Their nephew. It's Peyton and Eli Manning's nephew, but he's a really good quarterback. So this guy knew Queen Evers or whatever the heck his name is, knew he wasn't going to be at Texas, but he could go be a starter somewhere else, raise his draft stock a little bit more, and then make more. I don't know. Maybe some people think this is my only chance. I might as well go. Maybe he knows he's not. I have no idea why he would make that decision, because you crushed yourself financially.
Can I say, I want to compliment both of you for a second. The fact that you both successfully pretended like you cared about the Quinn Ewers story is really, that is professionalism at its best. Can I raise something that has totally nothing to do with this?
The Gronkowski joke from
listen
the
to this.
Tom Brady roast?
Amazon spokesperson Tim Doyle has told NPR it will not list import charges on products after the White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt described the reported change as a, quote, hostile and political act by Amazon. What Amazon was going to do when you buy something, if it's $9, it was going to say $7.80 is the cost of the product, $1.20 is the cost of the Trump tariff. She says one sentence, hostile and political act, and Jeff Bezos fades. I mean,
it's unbelievable
to
me.
How pathetic are these people?
Well, maybe he has Jordan Hudson running his
Maybe
PR
he
team.
does.
We're not talking about
She's
that.
his creative muse, exactly.
You know, and here he is running around in these t-shirts, spending all this time weightlifting to build him up to look like some kind of big macho guy.
Who, Jeff Bezos?
Jeff Bezos.
I was like, Bill Belichick didn't look all that way.
No. Jeff Bezos spends a lot of time in the gym now, I think. And
he's got that new. Yeah, he's got that new wife.
He's got. Well, I don't think they're married yet, but the wedding is supposed to be many millions.
Can we get back to this for a second? It is for him to be transparent, Amazon, meaning Bezos, and disclose to the customer what you're paying for the product and why there's a surtax.
Is it no different than a sales tax? Like when you go to a store, doesn't it list all of the
that's
sales
what they would
taxes?
argue. And because the press secretary, who is more of a Trump sycophant than practically anybody, other than maybe Kristi Noem, called it a hostile and political act by Amazon, Jeff Bezos does a 180. I mean, are we doomed or are we doomed? This guy, and we're going to talk about lawyers standing up or not standing up with former Attorney General Scott Harshbarger and one of his colleagues at 12 o'clock. So this kind of capitulation is just atrocious. You have 30 seconds to say whatever you want to say about Belichick, then you have to leave.
I was going to say, I wish I could like pull myself from the vice grip that is Amazon.
Yeah.
Like I wish I could.
We all do.
I know. It's like I'm just caught in this. It's so easy to like, oh, I need this, and then it's at my doorstep.
I know.
But I feel like I need to somehow like find a way to do that with Costco, because Costco at least has.
Walmart delivers.
Yeah, but they've also capitulated. I think Costco.
By the way, can I interrupt? For all of you here, right after the show at 2 o'clock, Trenny and Marjorie are going to be doing on the sidewalk Jordan Hudson, the high school years. Just meet them out on Boylston Street. It'll all be fine.
Oh, okay. You like this story as much as anybody else.
He pretends.
Maybe I do, maybe I don't.
He pretends.
Oh,
okay, we've been speaking with Trenny Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston. He's the one who knows about the sex shop in Provincetown, we'll say that. Up next, after the noontime news, we are going to talk about people bending to Donald Trump from the legal system. You're listening to Boston Public Radio.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues up ahead with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Safety Insurance, offering a variety of home insurance products to cover your home's increased value. You can ask an independent agent about Safety Insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms. Join Chef Patty Hinich as she travels from one end of America to the other, all while exploring the cultural connections that transcend borders. Watch Patty Hinich Explores Pan Americana, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2, Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We'll talk with the group Lawyers Defending American Democracy, Executive Director Lauren Stiller Raclean, and former Massachusetts Attorney General Scott Harshbarger about the legal nightmare that's befallen America's justice system and what groups like theirs can do to hold bad actors to account. That is, Trump doesn't arrest them first.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we talk to the two sisters behind Zazu Pierogi as Vanessa and Casey White test the Shark Tank waters, pitching their brand to investors on the hit ABC reality show later this week. But first, they'll join us here, testing some new flavors, talking through what it's like running a business as sisters, and what separates a pierogi from a dumpling or a ravioli. That, plus two more things next on the second hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is marking his 100th day in office. He will hold the first rally of his term tonight. Trump's expected to highlight his record when he rallies with supporters in Warren, Michigan, but NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports Trump's approval rating is sliding.
The president will speak at Macomb Community College just north of Detroit. While Trump tends to use these speeches to claim policy victories, this one comes as Americans are increasingly doubting him. A new poll from NPR PBS News Marist finds Trump's approval rating at 42%. Polls have shown his approval steadily slipping since he took office. Trump won Michigan along with every other battleground state and is attempting to boost manufacturers like Detroit's auto companies with tariffs. However, Trump's tariffs on goods from the world over, including a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, have rattled markets and raised recession fears. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News.
Amazon says it has no plans to display import charges on certain products. Company spokesman Tim Doyle issued a statement after the White House protested over a media report that Jeff Bezos' company had been planning to list how tariffs hike prices on the e-retail site. Doyle says the team that runs the Amazon Hall store considered the idea of listing the import charges on some products, but that was never approved. Bezos was among the tech moguls who donated to President Trump's inauguration fund and attended the swearing-in. Amazon is a financial supporter of NPR. Canadian voters have decided that Liberal Party leader Mark Carney should stay on the job. Katie Toth reports Carney and his party have vowed to oppose President Trump.
As Prime Minister Carney thanked voters, he warned them to prepare for the worst.
America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never.
This past December, the Liberal Party was imploding. Under Pierre Poilievre, conservatives made huge gains, but not enough to run the government.
While we will do our constitutional duty of holding government to account and proposing better alternatives, we will always put Canada first.
The New Democrats, a social democrat party, suffered major losses, causing leader Jagmeet Singh to push back tears as he resigned. For NPR News, I'm Katie Toth.
The Vatican confirmed today that 2 of the 135 cardinal electors eligible to participate in a conclave to select a successor to the late Pope Francis will not participate because of health reasons. Now, this brings the number of cardinal electors down to 133. The Vatican's preparing to hold the conclave beginning May 7th. Pope Francis died Easter Monday at the age of 88. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Afternoon with the latest from the GBH newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. Harvard is changing the name and focus of its Central Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Cara Pezza reports the moves come a week after the university sued the Trump administration over what it calls government outreach.
Harvard's Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging will now be known as the Office of, quote, Community and Campus Life. In a campus-wide email, Harvard's formerly titled Chief Diversity Officer says the renamed office will now focus on low-income and first-generation students. The university has been praised for refusing to comply with a variety of Trump administration mandates. Harvard government professor Ryan Enos says he and some of his colleagues are now worried the school is backing down.
There's a concern that while Harvard is putting on an outwardly brave face, that they may be quietly capitulating to some of the Trump administration's demands.
Harvard declined to comment. Kirk Carapeza, GBH News, 89.7.
Boston mayoral candidate Josh Kraft has received $1,000 in political campaign contributions from 4 top attorneys at the high-end law firm Paul Weiss. The donations come a month after his dad, Robert Kraft, helped broker a meeting between the Trump administration and the law firm. The Globe reports that a Kraft Group spokesperson says that Robert Kraft wasn't involved in coordinating any donations from the attorneys to Josh's campaign. Red Sox in Canada tonight, which is not the 51st state to open a series with the Blue Jays in Toronto, Celtics and Magic at the TD Garden tonight. That's Game 5. A win sends the Celtics to the next round. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance with Snapshot, which monitors safe driving habits to determine a personalized rate at Progressive.com. Not available in California or from all agents. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you. And streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here at the Boston Public Library we're back here every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, but on Governor Healy's Day is going to be May 9th. Governor Maura Healey will be with us on May 9th. And Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General, will be with us May 13th. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. As Donald Trump tests and ignores the rule of law, not every legal professional in this country is following behind the capitulation of the Paul Weisses of the world. And as we learned a few weeks ago, Marjorie, Paul Weiss is not one person. We learned that.
That is right.
Correct?
Not Paul Weiss.
It's not Paul Weiss himself.
One
exactly.
Paul, one Weiss. I think they're both dead.
Enter the coalition, lawyers defending American democracy, advocating for due process, the rule of law under a lawless administration, and for lawyers to stand up and do what the good ones do best, which is fight. Here with us at the library is Lauren Stiller-Reclean. She's executive director of the group Lawyers Defending American Democracy. Great to see you again, Lauren.
Thank you.
And with us on Zoom from Florida, former Massachusetts Attorney General, who's now both the co-founder and chair for Lawyers Defending American Democracy, Scott Harshbarger. Scott, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure.
And for more information on their work, by the way, go to ldad.org. Sorry, Marjorie.
No, that's okay. I interrupted you. So, Scott Harshbarger, tell us more about Lawyers for Defending Democracy. Why was it needed? What does it do?
Well, this organization was formed several years ago as a result of a speech that I gave at the Harvard Law School reunion, which to Jim's consternation was my 50th. I want to report that clearly so that he can comment on that. But basically, it was because we were looking at what was already a systematic assault on due process, equal protection, core democracy, and rule of law values and principles. And it was clear to me, it seemed to me at least, that it was pretty obvious that lawyers in particular, who take an oath to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law, ought to be mobilizing to raise people's concern about this, to resist, to stand and deliver and oppose this. So we began that. That was several years ago. The reality is today, it is not that we have failed. It is that we are seeing, in my view, and you're going to hear from Lauren, the executive director, who's done an outstanding job leading us at this point in the Lawyers Defending American Democracy, trying to mobilize the profession to speak truth to power and to make it clear to people that we are seeing a fundamental sleepwalking into autocracy, if not a coup, at least a constitutional crisis, because so many lawyers are remaining silent in the face of this assault by the current administration, which has done it in wide open public state. They've made it very clear what they intend to do, Jim and Marjorie. And the answer is we as lawyers, we as a profession must resist. But we are facing some very strong headwinds. And that's why we hope that lawyers will come off the sidelines, will stand and deliver, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as lawyers, members of this profession, to stand up for the rule of law.
So, Lauren, what are you doing? I mean, we've talked a lot about this on the show. By our count, and you correct me if I'm wrong, 9 law firms have cut deals with Trump, agreed to provide $975 billion of free legal assistance to Trump's favorite causes. Some law firms have stood firm, have gone to court, and so far been successful. What is the lay of the land, in the whole legal profession right now?
Well, as Scott set up, the lay of the land is waking up, I would say. It has been a difficult go. The profession is afraid. And we issued last week a letter to the most powerful law firms in the world, the 170 of the top 200 who have taken absolutely no stand, and said it is critical that the law firms who, with the money, with the prestige, with the power, get together and plan a way to fight back. Because if we lose the legal profession, then we have lost.
Well, but there is a way to fight back, unless I'm wrong. Those law firms which have chosen to not give in to Trump's, I think it's extortion, it's fair to call it extortion, those who haven't given in to it have gone to court, challenged it, and at least temporarily have won. So why is that not trickling down to their colleagues?
Because they're worried about money, they're worried about clients leaving, and they're making really poor decisions in the process. It's inconceivable to me that law firms would capitulate and give up before they've even been issued an order, which 9 have already done. And what they're missing is how angry their associates are. What they're missing is that there are a lot of clients out there who are saying, why on earth would I hire as my lawyer somebody who will cave in before anything even happens?
Well, they're also looking at how unsympathetic they appear. When you look at Paul Weiss, the partners there are averaging around $20 million a year. I mean, during the Trump administration, they can't squeeze by on a little less than that. And then you hear the first-year associates are making $220,000. Then you have to wonder whether any associates will want to go to this firm, which looks so weak-kneed.
Some have left, and we've read some of their quotes.
A lot have left. There was this very compelling interview on the Daily with a young man that had quit his law firm, and he had come to the United States from Japan, and he talked about all the reasons he came to the United States. His law firm just bending down. So can a Paul Weiss change their mind after agreeing to crawl across the floor for Donald Trump, or not?
Well, the funny part is, we don't know of any legal deal they actually signed. All we hear are the tweets, well, the tweet equivalents from Trump about what he got. But we don't have any indication, and the question has been asked over and over, was there a settlement? So it looks like they went in, they said, here, have $100 million of free legal work. By the way, who the heck in their firms are going to do that work?
And we will stop doing diversity, equity, and inclusion considerations.
Right.
Yeah.
And here, we'll do all this. We'll get nothing for it, but maybe you'll get off our back until he gets annoyed again, right? Because that's what the president does. He gets annoyed, he'll come right back at them.
You know, Scott Harshbarger, what we've read beyond the 9 capitulators so far, for lack of a better expression, there are a lot of law firms that haven't formally given in to Trump, where if you want to defend yourself against Trump or sue Trump, they refuse to take your case for fear that they will be targeted. How is that not an ethical violation for a lawyer or a bunch of lawyers?
Well, I think that, as has been reported in a couple of the amicus briefs in some of the cases, ethical professors have made it very clear that these are substantially potential ethical violations. This is, Jim, you made the point, and while it's hard to make the direct statement, this is extortion. And this is pure and simple, bending the knee, obeying in advance the requests of an autocrat to interfere with the core of our profession. And what is startling to me, still to this day, is that in spite of what we're seeing, and in spite of the fact that every judge that hears this case does issue essentially an injunction. It is clearly illegal. It is clearly unconstitutional. And by and large, the legal profession still remains silent. It is stunning. And to me, I think it is, as Lauren has said, as nicely as we can say it, this is about profit over principle. This is about being afraid of the revenge, the clear statements by a president and administration that they will come after you. And instead of being the power elite that they claim to be all the time, and we in the profession say we will not be intimidated, the reality is that the administration has come at the law firms and the profession to date has failed to deliver, and that's very dangerous.
We're talking to former Massachusetts Attorney General Scott Harshbarger and Lawrence Stiller Reclean from Lawyers Defending American Democracy, LDAD.org.
So we have seen in the Department of Justice where people are not making $20 million a year as attorneys. I think 100 attorneys have resigned.
In the Civil Rights Division.
Yes, because they were going to have to go out and go after, for example, trans athletes in high school sports and other things they didn't want to have to go after. So maybe the less money you make, the more principled you are. I don't know.
Well, what's happening in the Justice Department right now is just unbelievable in terms of who is leaving. The most skilled, the most dedicated, the most hardworking public employees are leaving en masse at this point because they don't want to do the work that they're being assigned. And, the one thing that we miss, too, I think, when we're talking about this administration is it's not just Trump. You have Russell Lloyd,
Head of Office of Management and Budget.
Who runs the Office of Management, who actually said before the election, the point is the causing trauma and pain in the federal workforce.
Right.
When we say the cruelty is the point, they say the cruelty is the point. And that's where I think there has to be more attention and more focus on him, on Stephen Miller, on these other people driving because we know from the first administration, Trump doesn't read this stuff. He doesn't care. He likes his power.
Can we stay on this Civil Rights Division thing for a minute, Scott? I mean, what the woman who's running it right now has said specifically is they will not be devoting time to the traditional issues for the Civil Rights Division, namely voting rights protection, unconstitutional police practices, and instead they will, and I'm not making this up, it was in the Washington Post yesterday, this morning, anti-Christian bias and trans athletes, and by the way, you can count on one hand how many on the college level, at least. Like, for example, in Maine, there is one, and Janet Mills, the governor, is
Didn't
putting...
Baker say 10?
10 in the country.
Charlie
10
Baker
in the whole
did. So
country.
I'm curious, as a guy, you were the Middlesex DA, Scott Harshbarger. You were the Attorney General, and you may recall you gave the 50th anniversary speech at Harvard Law School. I don't know if you remember that far back, Scott. But the big debate in Trump 1.0, that Marjorie and I had on the air all the time, should the resistors, for example, in the Justice Department, stay and fight from inside, waiting to be fired potentially? Or did those 100 lawyers make the right decision and say, enough, I'm washing my hands of this, I'm leaving? What do you advise these mostly career public servants, Scott Harshbarger?
Well, it's hard to give each individual advice here. What you would hope is that, first of all, people would make decisions based on principle, but the principle here is very clearly articulated. There is a dramatic shift at the Department of Justice. They are clearly agreeing to be the president's attorneys. They're not trying to be independent. This chief of the Civil Rights Division makes it very clear what they intend to do. And we've already seen many, many Justice Department prosecutors leave. Now, part of that is that they're trying to make the point here that this is a radical shift in policy, but it's also a radical shift in law. It's a radical change about what we will consider equal protection to be, what we consider due process to be. And I think that they're hoping that their expression by stepping out will trigger the members, the thousands of members of the legal profession, to say this shall not stand. This is not Republican or Democratic issue. This is about the rule of law. This is about who should make these decisions. And the reality is the executive has pushed the limits beyond the law. And we're going to see whether the legal profession continues to be, as Lauren says, will stand and deliver here at this point in time, or whether we too will bend the knee and essentially give in and hope this goes away, Jim. It's sort of, maybe it will drift away and people will forget. How people should decide this one by one at this point, so far the majority are deciding to be silent. I give credit to those in the Justice Department, in the prosecutors who have refused to follow these orders and this policy, because at least they're standing on principle, not simply giving in to preserve their jobs.
I know I speak for Marjorie. In our view, and I'm guessing you don't disagree, silence in this kind of setting is complicity. And so we'll maybe leave it at that.
We're talking to former Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Scott Harshbarger, and Lauren Stiller, right, Clean Executive Director. They're both from the Lawyers Defending American Democracy. Scott's co-founder, Lauren is Executive Director. You know, I was very heartened. There was this poll yesterday, it was Washington Post poll about the president's first 100 days. And what it found is that a vast majority of Americans, particularly when it comes to the Supreme Court, I think it was, 80% or something, or 90% of people do not want the President of the United States to defy the Supreme Court. And they don't like the idea, a smaller number, but still a majority number, do not like the idea of his defying court orders. And I thought maybe some of these law firms might see this and think that Americans are looking to the courts and, you know, lawyers in the courts to hold the line.
Well, yes, and didn't this morning Trump's press secretary not rule out Trump arresting Supreme Court judges?
Yeah, I thought that might have been a little overblown.
No, but she didn't say no. She said if they stand in the way of enforcement of the law. Yeah.
Right.
They take nothing off the table.
They take nothing off the table. That's right. But I thought that was encouraging.
I think the way in which the courts have held has been extremely encouraging, and the way in which the country is responding to that is definitely encouraging. And why it is taking these law firms so long to recognize that that's where the law is, that's where the courage is, and that's where the need is, I don't know.
Maybe there's something wrong with law schools, Jim. You're a lawyer.
Sort of. You know, Lauren said it's encouraging, and it's on its face what the courts have done, Scott Harshbarger, is encouraging. But, for example, on Trump's continued flaunting of decisions of courts, for example, the most dramatic and clear one to me is when they ruled overwhelmingly. Was it 9-zip or 7-2?
I think it was 9-zip.
That he had to facilitate, was the word, the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongly deported, according to their own Justice Department, to El Salvador. And not only are they doing nothing to get him back, they say outright, including the Attorney General, we have no intention of getting it back. And what I worry about, even with the good lawyers and the good judges and all that we are, as a country and as a judicial system where you worked almost your whole life, Scott, we are unprepared to deal with this kind of flaunting of the law and the Constitution. We can't keep up with how Trump treats laws and the Constitution. Is that, do you buy that or no?
I'm very concerned about that. I think that this is part of the reference to the sleepwalking into autocracy.
Yeah,
you're
right.
People don't quite believe that this is happening. And the irony of this is, I want to go back to your quote about the silence. I mean, the Martin Luther King words are crucial here.
Yeah.
You know, we will not remember the words of our enemies, but rather the silence of our friends.
Yeah.
And that is,
chills.
it seems to me, the major issue here is that right now, the trouble with the judiciary, with the law, and Lauren has spoken to this repeatedly, is it takes time. It as a process. It takes its while to work out. And here they're flooding the zone. They engage in a complete effort of distraction all the way through this. So we don't know. I am concerned. Actually, one thing that does not concern me is that appellate judges and lower court judges, whoever appointed them, are standing tall on the facts and the law and the Constitution. The question to me is, will the Supreme Court of the United States, which had brought us the immunity decision to begin with, will they stand tall in this effort, because I think then people will truly rally. I am still hopeful that the people will rise when their constitutional crisis makes it clear that the president is so obviously, and the executive is so obviously engaging in illegal, unconstitutional action. But boy, we have never encountered this, and what Lauren is focusing on is our profession, our role, our responsibility, our privilege is to uphold the rule of law and the Constitution. And right now, we are barely getting a passing grade for doing that.
But you know what else drives me nuts? I mean, in this Garcia case, the Abrego Garcia case, where the Supreme Court said they had to facilitate Trump had to facilitate his removal. This judge has talked about how they've defied her orders over and over and over and over. When are they going to put somebody in jail? When are they going to
By the way, that same judge gave them a week-long pause, an additional week to comply with her orders. Yeah.
I mean, this happened back during the Biden administration when Jim Jordan, the congressman, defied a subpoena. Did they hold him in contempt? No, they did not. So why don't they do that? I mean, should they do that? I suppose is the question. Should they do that?
I feel like they should do that. I'm a little persuaded when I read that they are not doing it because they don't want the full ire of the country now going against them for taking those kind of measures against the president or the president's people at this point. I think that day will be coming. But I think they feel that, okay, we'll take it through this process. And at the end of this process, I think there could be real contempt actions coming, but they are going to play it fully out so that nobody can criticize them for all the things they'll be criticized for anyway.
I think they're getting criticized for not doing it. It's kind of like Merrick Garland was so slow last time around. You thought he would have been better off in the Supreme Court, not the Attorney General, if he was going to
move like a tortoise. Well, they tried putting him on the Supreme Court, if you remember.
They
did
didn't
work
work
out too well.
He would have been better off there.
Lauren, can we stay with you? Marjorie mentioned a minute ago, I think you did too, a bunch of young associates making a ton of money who decided that they didn't want to work for a law firm that was giving in to this extortion from the Trump administration. I hope I got this right. Isn't your organization urging young law student candidates in their interviews with the big firms to ask a certain... you guys, right?
I wrote an article about that, yes.
Explain. Oh, that's right. It was your piece.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit of what you're urging lawyers to do during those interviews with the big firms.
So the article that I wrote focused on the power that a lot of law students have, because firms like to tout that they pick the best and the brightest from the top law schools, which means that these young people have some real power. And they should be asking when they go into interviews, and they can do this politely, I think, and not be particularly at risk, to say, talk to me about your culture. Tell me about how you feel about your pro bono program and what's to be expected. Just ask in very rational, polite ways. Ask about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, you had a question that was much more direct about Trump. What would you do if you're directed by the Trump administration?
Absolutely, yes.
Take a particular... That's pretty bold on the part of a job applicant, though, isn't it?
If over the years, I've heard years ago when work-life challenges were a thing and people cared about that. People were always in job interviews, always saying, what's the work-life balance here? And they would ask very detailed questions about that. And when I would talk to managing partners about their reaction to that, they would always say... They always said that they were taken aback by the extent of the questions, but they didn't hold it against the candidate. They recognized that they were being pressured to put in place certain policies, and they had to deal with that. I don't think this is any different. I think we are in a place in a national emergency right now. And I think that students need to use... Everybody has power. That's the thing I always say all the time. Everybody has power. Figure out what your power is and use that power as best you can.
Yeah.
Scott Harshberg, I just have we only have a minute left. One last question for you. During RFK's Jr.'s nomination process, we went out of our way to mention that the American Medical Association, which represents, I think, somewhere near 50+% of doctors, was doing that silent complicit thing, not taking a position. How has the American Bar Association been on the issues that you and Lauren and your members are working on? How have they been?
Well, they are getting there, and partly it's because of Lauren's work as as part of the major advisory group of the ABA. They were slow to come, but once they took the bit, if you will, they have been a stand-up group. The problem they're having, of course, they're getting extorted now too in terms of the kind of federal funds. But the thing I want to say, Jim and Marjorie, I commend you for staying on this, because this is far too often simply ignored. People can't quite believe it's happening. They don't think it can happen here. They think we'll never encounter the problems of the 1930s. The reality is, as Timothy Snyder says, it's happening now. The American abyss is occurring. The crisis is now. And I am very grateful that you've given us a chance to at least speak our mind about this. Plus, my wife is very happy that I'm talking to you.
Hi to Judy.
And Marjorie.
We're big fans of Judy.
And we
say hi to Judy.
Happy birthday
You're impossible.
to Lauren.
Happy birthday, Lauren.
Do you have any other personal messages you want to share, Scott, or is that it?
I miss your very probing and often starting out kind but end up very tough questions.
Hold on for a second. Did Timothy Snyder, he wrote Tyranny,
on Tyranny,
right?
yeah, the guy from Yale.
Hasn't he fled to
He fled the country, yes, he did.
I don't
By
know.
the way, one last thing before you go. Listening to this interview is our friend and weekly guest, James Beard Award winner Corby Comer, who says I misused language before. It is not flaunting, it is flouting.
Yes.
Thank you, Corby.
Several
and my
texters
apologies.
have objected to your grammar.
Scott Harshbarger, say hi to Judy. It's great to see you. And Lauren, thank you as well. We really keep at it. We're really proud
thank
of
you
your
very,
work.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Great to talk to you, Scott.
Thank you, Marjorie.
We have been speaking with
Scott.
Lauren
Good to see you,
Stiller
Scott.
Reichland and former Attorney General Scott Harshbarger from Lawyers Defending American Democracy. And thank you very much for coming in. You want to get more information about their group? It's LDAD. LDAD.org, LDAD.org for more information. Thank you
Stay in
again.
touch with us.
Okay, coming up after a quick break, sisters Vanessa and Casey White started out making local waves with their frozen pierogi business. After scaling up nationally, they're taking the next step onto Shark Tank. They're going to join us up next. We're going to eat some pierogies at Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Radio and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
When the Mass Lottery's Lotto game first came out, it flopped.
And the Lottery Commission just gives up.
But that failure became a national craze, thanks to some savvy marketing.
Lotto fever! Show us your Lotto tickets!
I'll make a buck. I'll make a buck.
You have the government out promoting gambling.
We viewed it as being in the entertainment business.
That story on this week's Scratch and Win. Tonight at 9 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Simmons. Since 1909, fabrics, furnishings, reupholstery, and custom window treatments. Spring event now in progress. More information about Simmons Design Services and their spring event at Simmons.com or at their showroom in Lynn. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Brown. She just ate something she liked. That was her in the background. Marjorie, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The governor joins us on May 9th for an hour at the library. The attorney general joins us on May 13th for an hour. So it's time for another edition of our occasional series, How Do You Two Know Each Other? Here with us now at the library are sisters Vanessa and Casey White, co-founders of Judicial Pierogi. Is that fairly well pronounced?
Yeah, we just try to make it as straightforward.
They're both wearing T-shirts saying the pierogi, Scott, true to their goals here. And they've gone from the farmers markets of Somerville, which is I think where you were when we were talking to you, when we met you, to Mark Cuban and the other four sharks on ABC's hit reality show Shark Tank. Their episode airs this Friday at 8. So no spoilers, even though we're going to try. But what can we tell you is that Shark Tank isn't all that's been going on in the Judicial universe, with new flavors at Whole Foods, whole bunch of new stores, pop-ups at Boston Calling, and of course, Boston Polish Fest in May. Vanessa, Casey, great to have you again. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I've just bitten into, I think that this is potato. It's not potato and cheese.
Loaded baked potato.
Loaded
Oh, that's
baked
the new one.
potato.
Is that the new one?
Yeah, that's the new one.
Yeah.
When's that coming out?
So is this bacon in here?
Bacon, cheddar, chive, sour cream.
It's delicious.
The works.
God.
It's delicious. I've been waiting all day to eat these.
It's at some local stores now, but it's launching in Whole Foods nationwide as of and I would say June at this point. So yeah, it's on. I think it's Casey's.
It's my favorite. I eat it every single day.
It's delicious. Okay, so just tell people that may be confused, what is a pierogi, Casey?
So it's a Polish dumpling. So every culture has their dumpling. And so it's a pasta dough filled with potato, cheese, meat. So so we always say, like, what's a pierogi? It's like, for Italians, it's a ravioli. For like an Asian dumpling, like a wonton or a pot sticker. So then people can kind of make that connection from there. Yeah.
And what's the difference, in essence, Vanessa, between like a Polish pierogi and, let's say, a bao, a Chinese dumpling kind of thing? What's the difference?
Yeah, so I would say that, ours is like an egg pasta dough. It becomes boiled, and then the traditional way, you can either eat them boiled or fried. It's a turnover gesture, so like a ravioli is 2 sheets of pasta that's kind of cut. Ours is like a one round flipped over. So it's kind of, similar to like an empanada, but empanadas become fried, so it's a little bit different treatment afterwards.
My favorite part of what you do is how this all started. Explain what Jaju means, which may get us into the discussion about the genesis of this. Go ahead.
Sure. So we're sisters. So the segment How Do You Know Each Other? She showed up when I was like 4.5 years old.
And you were appalled, I'm sure.
Go ahead.
Not so happy. I really wanted her name to be Courtney, but my parents would not let that happen, unfortunately. So we're sisters, and we grew up around a Polish deli in Western Massachusetts, which our grandfather founded with his siblings in around the 60s. And our uncle still runs it. It's called Wineski Farms. It's in Feeding Hills. And, I was there in middle school, like helping make pierogi on the tables with my elders. And we just learned all the tricks of the trade. And it was just like normal for us to have pierogi all the time in the freezer. And then we realized once we came to Boston for school, Tufts, Bentley, that people didn't have access to good pierogi. People started asking us where we got them.
And what the word means, grandfather? Is that what it means?
Yep.
Okay.
Wait, go ahead, finish the thought.
Yeah, so Jaju is grandfather, so in Polish it's spelled like D-Z-I-A, D-Z-I-U. So, of course, 99% of the population would be like, what is that? So we did the phonetic spelling, Jaju.
Okay. So if you go to the store, you buy them in the bags like that, and there's about 15 or 20 in each bag, something like that, 10, 15, I don't know.
There's between like 11 and 13.
Okay.
So,
This is our Costco bag, though, so we have... The regular bags have, like you said, 11 and 13, and the Costco is 1.5 pounds. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And you can put them in the freezer.
Yeah.
So would you say this is an hors d'oeuvre? This is an accompaniment to your meal? Where would you?
Who the hell cares what it is? It's
I
delicious.
care. I'm like Martha Stewart. You know
Okay,
about
go
my
ahead.
legendary dinner parties. I want to know.
This is a great past hors d'oeuvre for your dinner party.
A great past hors d'oeuvre. That's what I would say for the dinner parties. Okay.
Yeah. What is this thing with the yellow stuff in it?
That's
fabulous.
butternut squash.
Oh,
That's
my
our first
God.
vegan flavor.
So it is?
Yeah.
Oh, then I don't like it. I thought I did, and then
Surprise.
I don't.
It's a great flavor
No, I
that
love it. It's
happens
great.
to be vegan, we like to say.
So which one of you was cruel enough to decide to give out pierogies on Halloween? Which one of
that was
you?
me.
Now,
Yeah.
What prompted that? I mean, what were you thinking?
I'm always like, she's the finance and operations
Courtney, you mean,
half.
over there. Courtney.
This is Courtney.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Casey.
Courtney. I'm so glad that's not my name.
I know.
whatever.
I'm happy it's not your name too.
Okay,
But
good.
when I was,
Okay.
yeah. So when I'm the marketing and sales half, and I'm always down for the bit. Like I'm always down for like making content, making people laugh, and so I love host. Like I have a great neighborhood, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna fry some pierogi this year and like get some content. And it went viral for
And
for
did
that.
you dress up as a pierogi? Did I see a picture of that?
That's me always in the pierogi outfit too, like fully for the actually. So a little plug. We have a Walk for Hunger team with May dumplings. Who's Irene.
we love Irene Lee.
Yeah, she's
great.
great.
Comes on sometimes, but we're hosting a team, and the pierogi will be there at the Walk for Hunger, being its awkward self. And one of our coworkers is gonna do it, and we're doing a whole routine of her like taking the tea in to Boston Common and the pierogi, and so it's like always thinking about how you can make people laugh and entertain people. So
Are you guys all women? Is it an all-women operation, Casey?
Yep. So we are still, I was like, I started to list people. I'm like, no, we're a very small team. So there's 4 of us really like full-time working on
But
this
you're in
business.
stores all over the country.
Yeah, we
So how
tackle it.
how does that happen?
We've got
I
a
don't
lot
know,
of Bobshi's chained
we're
to table.
super Polish. I don't know. We're very Polish and just like love to work. So I feel like
Wait, you're not making all
no.
these.
No. We did for the first 6 years.
Yeah.
We definitely did. We were working around the clock. Like I'd be on like morning shifts, so it'd be like 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. boiling.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember, when we launched with Hannaford, it was like 24-hour boiling patrol. But now we work with co-manufacturers. We have one locally in Hingham, and then we're trying to launch with another one in the Midwest.
Incredible.
Okay, so you are sisters, as you pointed out, 4.5 years apart. But I mean, sometimes you can really want to strangle your sister. That's been my experience.
Never.
But it doesn't. You don't like want to go different places on holidays so you can get a break from each other.
We do.
You
We
do.
do.
Oh, you do. Okay, so you're going one place at Thanksgiving. You're going another place at Thanksgiving. That's good.
Oh,
no
no,
vacation.
not for that. No, we
Okay.
Vacation definitely.
We're
Remember, like
really small family too.
Yeah.
though, so
we have no first cousins, so like we were the grandkids,
Only
no
grandkids,
first
no
cousins.
first-
So it's
Okay.
kind of
Very
like
sad.
our duty to kind of
Stick together.
stick together and like keep this
And do
legacy
this,
alive.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so can we
yeah.
get to Shark Tank? That's what I want to talk. Now, you're allegedly not going to tell us because you're not allowed to under contract what happened. Is that correct?
Yes,
And we'll
yes.
find out. Okay, so let's
Mark
start.
Cuban will come knock on our door.
Okay, so let's start with that. What happened?
Yeah, how you get picked?
Okay, no.
Yeah,
no,
we can definitely
Yeah,
talk about,
let's talk about
the
that.
How'd you get
whole
picked?
experience. So we were fortunate that, I don't know if you're aware, but Shark Tank does like a tour around the country and
Yeah.
does like auditions. We're actually fortunate they reached out to us, and when we got the email, we were like, this can't be real. This got to be spam, and it was real. And so we did our initial like kind of phone call, like, are you a person? Do you have a pulse, etc. And then we had to do like 3 combined like mortgage and college applications all in one, plus like a 10-minute video. And then we were selected to move forward. And then we worked for months to like kind of sign off every like element of, it's not scripted when you're there at all. It's like 100% interacting with the sharks, like real people. It's no scripted, but you do have to get like your clothing signed off. Like you can't walk on there with like Prada or
So you
something
can't dress
like
as a
that.
pierogi?
I did dress
you
like
did?
a
Well,
pierogi.
there-
Don't worry.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
got signed off on. Yes,
Yeah, the
for sure.
pierogi.
Now, we have a little sound here. This is sort of, I guess, a tiny little sneak peek, and not in violation of the rules, from Friday's episode, a bit of the origin story for your company, pitched by Vanessa and Casey to the Shark Tank Sharks. Here it is.
Growing up in Western Massachusetts, we always had pierogi from our grandfather's deli in our freezer. There was no mac and cheese. If we were hungry, grab pierogi and fry them up in some butter.
When we went off to college in Boston, our mom would hand deliver these same pierogi to our dorms, and all of our friends would ask, hey, where'd you get those?
Inspired, we dusted off our grandfather's handwritten recipes and got to work creating Jaju pierogi.
I'm convinced. That was pretty impressive.
It's the first time I've heard that whole shtick.
Yeah. I was like, the amount of times we practiced that 1-minute pitch, oh my God. Like I remember the morning of, we were like, day before, we were walking to the grocery store when we were in California, because they fly you out to LA, and we were walking to the grocery store and we're just side by side, practicing
whole way.
over and over and over.
Yeah.
And I can still say it like in my sleep.
It's just that part, when you walk out. It's just that part that you have like that set, and then the rest of it is all.
So is it live, or if people make mistakes, can they start again?
It's completely, you
Live
walk
to
out
tape.
there and you just gotta figure it out in real time.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who are the biggest a-holes of the people? I mean, they are.
No,
Some of them
honestly-
are really a-holes.
Honestly, we just had such a positive experience,
You did?
and I'm excited to see. Like, we got our first cut yesterday. Like, they're gonna post tomorrow, which I'm really excited. Like to see. It gave me. I don't know about you, but it gave me goosebumps to watch it, because it really felt real. It was the first like minute kind of splice advertisement that ABC Shark Tank will post on their social media, and like it's a great endorsement of our product, and all of the sharks, like it was all very positive, and our interactions were positive.
So Casey, if this is successful, we know you're not allowed to say. Friday night you got to watch. What do you get? What's the reward for? You can't say that either.
No, I mean,
Oh.
the exposure is insane.
Yeah, nationwide
right? Like,
publicity.
Don't they
is
invest
what they
in
get.
or whatever?
So if they offer you a deal and we said yes, then yes, they're our investor, and they tell you, right, they'll take you to the moon, and they sell themselves just as much as you sell yourself out there. I will go back to the personalities. They definitely lean into what you see on TV. So like there are some assholes. There are some
thank you for being
friendly.
honest. That is great.
Like they're kind of exactly what you see, right? So when you're in it,
Your sister
you're like
is glaring at you right
No,
now.
no,
I agree.
Yeah,
Good.
because watched it for years and years and years, right? So when I walked out there and like, so after the initial pitch, I was very nervous for that. But then afterwards, it's very much a conversation.
Yeah.
But it's TV for them, so they're leaning into their personalities, and so it's kind of funny.
But even the assholes, you know, they still.
I mean, they love the
were
product.
still-
They love the
Yeah.
product.
Okay, so
And I like the negotiations that you see go back and forth between the people that have the product and the sharks. You know, that's always fun. 5%, 10%, what you're going to 20%, what the piece of the action that they want. That's always very stressful to negotiate that right there on the
Yeah.
stage, right?
But we're to go back to your question, we're so excited to see the reaction. We like on a regular basis get a lot of people who discover us and send us like their personal stories, you know, via email and about like pierogi in their family or their jaju or whatever. And like, there's gonna be a lot of like spam email that comes in, and we're ready for like we're creating like an FAQ, you know, for those people, but we are excited to kind of read through those stories. So we're excited to see that, to get that response, and also see like any potential lifts. Like, you know, we're in 2,500 stores nationwide.
2,500 stores.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So hopefully, you know, maybe people will see us and go to the store or come to our website. And so we're really preparing, like, that's been my life for the last 3 weeks as like the marketing half, is just making sure that like on the website you get there and it's like, here's how you find us in store, here's how you buy right now, here's the merch section. Like,
you know what I wonder?
This is, by the way, Vanessa and Casey White from
Yes.
Jaju Pierogi.
Are there places where pierogies are more popular? Where?
Yeah, Poland.
Yeah, ha ha ha.
Thank
I
you.
used to see them in the Ukrainian club when I was a kid growing up. They had pierogies in the Ute club, as we called it, and they were really good. So I guess it's, you know, they're right near Poland,
yeah.
so it makes sense. But is it urban? Is it rural? Is it East Coast, West Coast? What's the deal?
So the Midwest is like the most popular pocket
Really?
for pierogi. Yes.
Why do you think that is?
There's a lot of people like immigrated there.
I said, and Polish
And-
people went from one cold
Yeah.
climate to another cold
Yeah.
climate. So like Canada,
Very
Midwest,
interesting.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
like,
Really?
yeah.
So they
Wow.
really know pierogi in the Midwest, but also we've noticed we do the best on the coast or where there's a lot of transplants, where people have lived somewhere and then they go somewhere else. Because
Yeah.
in the Midwest, they either make their own, they have a local supplier. So like initially we were really targeting the Midwest, but then we're like, oh, actually they're not as interested in our high quality premium product as, you know,
Florida,
Yeah.
Carolinas, because like we just did a Costco launch in Florida, specifically like really a quick launch to do a test.
How
And
they doing there?
They did.
Wow.
He was like, it was amazing. It was, and we were trying to capture those snowbirds, you know,
Wow.
around
Okay.
Easter.
Hey, can I ask
So
you?
I have another question.
Oh, go ahead.
Then you can go, Jim.
Thank you.
Do you prefer, if you're going to, the oil or the butter?
Butter.
Butter,
Oh.
for
All right.
sure.
Right away.
These are
Okay.
air fried, but you can also air fry them because ours are pre-boiled.
Yeah.
So you can just pop them in the air fryer. We didn't put anything on them with the air fryer, but definitely.
Definitely butter. Go for the butter.
butter.
Okay,
So
that's
are
what I
you the
thought.
business half of this? Are you the business? Who's the business
We're-
person?
well,
For
she-
both?
Yeah.
Well, then I'll ask
so it's
you.
like, so it's basically, yeah, it's really,
She went to business
it's
school.
really,
I'm just
it's really
pretending.
the operations, like business operations, finance, making sure we're every single day we can keep the lights on, and then the sales and marketing.
Are you making a ton of money?
I would say the grocery business is very romantic from the outside, but
Small margins?
the margins are pretty tight, especially for frozen.
Okay, so what is without getting you in the middle of this political nightmare, but this is a factual question.
Yeah.
Are Trump's tariffs affecting you? I mean, for example, any of the ingredients imported, or are you affected at all?
Not yet. So we work with a co-manufacturer, and so every 6 months we review our pricing. So we haven't had that review conversation yet, but like you have to prepare for it. And we've heard too out there, like when we like, for example, we have regional distributors, and we've raised our prices with the regional distributors, and they say, oh, this is all I'm hearing from my other vendors. Why is this happening? And so I think people are definitely being affected by it in real time.
But we actually don't, like all of our ingredients are US
They're local,
based.
they are.
Yeah. So like potatoes can come from Maine, like the cheese is from like Newark, Pennsylvania. Like
That's
we use
great.
we use
Yeah.
Cabot.
Are
like,
you okay with that? I mean, when we met you, how long ago were you here? 3 years? How many
No,
years ago?
2 years
2 years ago?
ago-ish? Yeah,
You were much more of like a family. I know it's still a family business kind of thing. Is the business part of it as you expand to these thousands of stores? is that as much fun as the startup part of this was? Casey, do you want to answer first?
I feel like it's not as fun, but it's addicting because as you progress and you learn, you like understand how to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So for me,
and you like the game enough? You like that part of the game?
Because you're like weirdly twisted and addicted. Like it's just like you're addicted to like figuring it out because 90% of food businesses, especially on the grocery shelf, fail within the first 5 years.
Wow.
So it's kind of like
we go to trade shows and it's like the businesses you see one year, like you just don't see them back the next.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of friends too that weren't able to make it because in addition to the margins, like you probably know, to sit on the grocery shelf, you're paying like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, or like for promotions, not only are you funding the sale, but you're paying a fee on top of that to run the sale. And like a lot of the advertising stuff for the grocery industry is really archaic. Like they're like, pay $4,000 to begin this flyer.
Right.
Like who looks at a flyer anymore? Do you know what I mean? And then they punish you for not putting your thing in a flyer. So it's just kind of, it's hard in that sense. But to answer your question, I mean,
I don't even remember my
your
question anymore.
Your question was like, are you still having fun?
Oh, yeah.
So I would say like the thing I've noticed most is that like we're a small team and we're always have this attitude like we can just add more hours, like do more, like it's fine. And I'm like really feeling at this point that like it's hard for me to do it all.
You guys are pretty honest. I love that. Two
Yeah.
things from me, and then Margie has one more. What's the plural of pierogi?
Pierogi.
Pierogi, okay.
So singular is
Let's get that out of the way.
pierogi. Singular is pierogi.
And number two, are there other siblings or are you it?
Just the two of us.
Okay.
Wow,
And number three, is it you went to Tufts with Vanessa? You went to Tufts with our buddy over here, Jamie.
your buddy.
Got any good stories about Jamie in
Wait,
college?
you went with him?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
We used to have what should I tell them about this time, Jamie? I don't know. Italian class? Yeah, Italian class.
Yeah.
That's right.
Jamie
Right, so,
speaks Italian.
So we were actually just talking that, I speak Italian too, because we took Italian together, and we were just talking about Sicily, because I was in Sicily. We both went on vacation at the same time, a week ago, and so I was just in Sicily, and I hit the earthquake, the eruption, and the Vatican, and then when I flew through Istanbul, and it was there for that earthquake too. And I was like, at 37 years of life, and I experienced two earthquakes.
Did people like Jamie in college? Tell the truth.
He actually had to like, so many people tried to follow him and like mob him because he was so popular that he had to like have a security detail. Yeah.
True. It's amazing.
Okay.
By the way,
you guys,
congratulations.
this is
You guys
delicious.
have done spectacularly well. We hope Friday night is a big success. And where in this?
What time is it on?
So it's 8 p.m.
On
8 p.m.
on ABC, and then if you don't have cable, it's on Hulu at midnight and Hulu Live at the time.
And in Greater Boston, where do we find these, please?
I mean, so most of the independent retailers have our product on shelf. All Whole Foods nationally, so any Whole Foods in the state. Big Y, Formaggio Kitchen, Foodies.
And the website is?
JajiPierogi.com.
Fabulous. It's
Thank
great
you
to see
so
both.
much.
Good luck Friday.
We have been speaking
Thanks
with
so
Jaji
much.
Pierogi co-owners Vanessa and Casey White. Catch them at ABC's Shark Tank this Friday night, 8 o'clock, or on shelves at your local Whole Foods, but I would tune in to see how they do Friday night at 8 o'clock. They're at Hannaford's as well, Big Y, and many more. For more info, go to JajuPierogi.com. That's JAJU Pierogi.com. Thank you
Great to
again
see you
for
both.
coming in, and good luck. After a quick break, two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
A few times a year, hundreds of people from all over Portland, Oregon come together to sing. This simple yet powerful idea has yielded music professor Cody Raven Morris 2 Grammy nominations for the Music Educator category. I'm Juana Summers. We'll talk the origin story of One Community Sing on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Lexus Broadway in Boston, presenting Kimberly Akimbo, the new musical by Boston native David Lanzier-Bear and composer Janine Tesori. May 6th to 18th at the Emerson Colonial Theater. More at LexusBroadwayInBoston.com. And Bernadine Sung Megason with Compass Real Estate, serving buyers and sellers throughout Greater Boston. Learn more at homesbybernadine.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Bradley, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Time for two more things. Marjorie, you are going to go first today. Take it away.
Okay. Well, you might ask yourself at this point, does Robert Kraft really want his son, Josh Kraft, to oust Michelle Wu and become the next mayor of Boston?
I know why you're asking this.
I'm wondering a little because we talked earlier about Paul Weiss, the first law firm in America, the places where people make $20 million a year if they're partners. The first to be willing to crawl across the floor for Donald Trump. Boston, as Emma Platoff points out in the Boston Globe today, is not exactly a hotbed of Trump support. So, as we know, Robert Kraft arranged he was like the go-between between Kraft and between Trump and Weiss, Paul Weiss, the senior partner there, when they were trying to negotiate their on bended knee performance. Now we find out that 4 top attorneys at the firm, including the chairman, the guy who was actually in Trump's office, have given $1,000 apiece, or $4,000 all totaled, to Josh Kraft. Is this helping him in Boston? I'm not really sure. We know that Kraft was that's Robert Kraft, longtime friend, went to Trump's wedding in 2005 to Melania Trump, donated $1 million to Trump's first inauguration. Robert Kraft said for a while he was going to distance himself after January 6th, that disgraceful insurrection on the Capitol. But then we find out that he was involved in the Paul Weiss negotiations, and that his wife, this is Robert Kraft's wife, Dana Blumberg, is also on the committee, the remade board, I should say, the JFK Center and the Performing Arts, which Trump has
What do you
taken
think
over.
Josh Kraft should do, return the money?
Absolutely.
I think it'd be, I'm with you, by the way. He doesn't need it. Apparently, Globe said he's got close to $800,000 raised. I think it'd be a great statement that,
but you know what's odd?
What?
That he hasn't returned it already.
Well, I mean, you don't know. I mean, it's one day. So
One
the story
day.
just ran this morning.
Well, but there should be a press release saying he's returned it already. I don't think that flies in Boston.
That's right. And the donation was before the Globe story. Obviously, it was not yesterday. Okay, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to start with something we can all agree upon. My political predictions are not ones that a sane person should bet on, but I did get one right. Shortly after the voters approved the millionaire's tax, that was a 4% surcharge if you make more than $1 million a year, in 2022, the chorus of accountants who work for millionaires, remember this, said Massachusetts would see a mass exodus of millionaires to places like Florida and New Hampshire. And I said at the time, no one's going to Florida because New Hampshire, because as Marjorie says, they don't have sidewalks. And no one's going to Florida because the odious, bigoted Ron DeSantis is the governor. It also won't happen because people live in Massachusetts because of the culture, the education, the values, etc. In any case, as I said, for once I was right. Yesterday, a couple of progressive research groups replaced sky is falling rhetoric with fact. Not only are the uber wealthy not leaving, the number of people, this is according to this research, with at least $50 million in total wealth, Marjorie, grew by 35% from the year the ballot question passed until the end of 2024. And not only is the tax not causing an exodus, it is causing major additional investments in schools and transportation, almost $2.5 billion a year that will make Massachusetts an even more attractive place to live. That's it. So in terms of my predictions, I'm sort of like that notorious blind squirrel. Occasionally I find a nut too. I was right. People aren't leaving, nor should they.
Well, you can bring that up with Shirley Young next time she comes
Believe me,
in,
I
because
intend
you
to.
argue about that all the time.
We do indeed.
Okay, coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to open the phone and text lines. No, are we doing that?
We're talking to John King.
Yeah, we're talking to John King. I made a mistake.
That's a small one.
It's John King right after the 1 o'clock news. Chief correspondent from CNN, of course, he's going to talk to us about what Trump has been doing lately. He's going to talk to us about his reporting in Arizona, the polls for the former president, and a lot more political news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support the news you trust by donating your car, truck, or other used vehicle to our vehicle donation program. You'll have more space in the driveway this spring, and you may earn a tax advantage. Learn more at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And M. Steinert & Sons, announcing the opening of their Waltham Piano Warehouse, offering new and used pianos, including Steinway and Steinway-designed Boston and Essex pianos. Appointment information at msteinert.com. And Somerville Open Studios. This weekend, from noon until 6, nearly 400 artists in 90 locations citywide will open their studios to the public. Map, artist, and trolley info at somervilleopenstudios.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, zooms in to talk about his latest report on 100 days of Donald Trump's second term. Will the president's historically low approval ratings have any impact on his agenda beyond Trump's talk of legal consequences for people conducting the polls? We'll also talk about how Trump helped elect a critic as the Liberal Party's next Prime Minister of Canada.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll end our Tuesday with you, opening the phone and text lines. Are you an early riser? Joining the trend of health influencers touting an early-to-bed, early-to-rise lifestyle? They're pushing wake-ups as early as 4 a.m. Is there something to this idea of waking up before the rest of the world and getting a head start on your day? Or is the allure of sleeping in simply too much to pass up? Call or text us next on the third hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Amazon denies it intended to list import charges for customers shopping its website after the White House slammed the e-retail giant. The company issued a statement after White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt responded to a report Amazon planned to display tariff pricing. She said such an action would be viewed as hostile and political. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is among the tech billionaires to pursue closer ties with the administration since the president returned to office. Amazon is a financial supporter of NPR. Negotiations between the U.S. and trading partners are pushing ahead. Talks intended to avoid some of the steep tariffs President Trump announced and then paused earlier this month. NPR's Tamara Keith reports Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is putting a positive spin on the economic uncertainty.
In a briefing, Bessent said Trump creates, quote, strategic uncertainty, but he insisted there is a process in place to navigate the president's trade war.
We have 18 important trading relationships. We'll put China to the side. 17, they are in motion.
Bessent didn't elaborate on the full list of countries, but expressed optimism.
I could see some announcements on India. I could see the contours of a deal with the Republic of Korea coming together. And then we've had substantial talks with the Japanese.
Bessent said China is under financial pressure to reduce tariffs on the United States. Tamara Keith, NPR News, the White House.
It has been a rocky 100 days for the stock market since President Trump took office. Here's NPR's Scott Horsley.
One of the goals of President Trump's trade war is to close the nation's trade deficit. But new figures from the Commerce Department show the deficit widened in March as U.S. businesses and consumers raced to get ahead of the president's tariffs. Exports and imports both rose during the month, but imports jumped a lot more. Coca-Cola sales dropped 2% during the most recent quarter, but the soft drink giant says profits were up. Coke says the effects of tariffs on its business are likely to be manageable. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Israeli and Hamas officials have held talks with Egyptian officials about reaching a ceasefire in Gaza. Here's NPR's Daniel Estrin.
Hamas says it met over the weekend with Egyptian officials in Cairo to discuss a ceasefire, a hostage prisoner exchange, and urgently needed aid to Gaza. Israeli media report a senior Israeli delegation met Egyptian officials in Cairo Monday. An Israeli official not authorized to speak publicly tells NPR Israel has rejected Hamas's offer for a 5-year truce. In a press conference, recently freed American-Israeli hostage Keith Siegel called on President Trump to help free Hamas's remaining hostages.
I urge the president to continue his commitment, apply pressure, restart negotiations immediately, and secure a deal.
Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Just as Canada was electing Liberal Party candidate Mark Carney, a Harvard grad, into a full term in office as Prime Minister yesterday, Roughly 50 Canadian students at Harvard who applied for mail-in ballots were not able to vote. The Crimson reports that as the election approached and students still didn't receive their ballots, the situation escalated to involve a formal complaint to Canada's Elections Commissioner and unsuccessful attempts by Carney himself to solve the slowdown. Even Carney's daughter Cleo, who goes to Harvard, reached out to her dad about those missing voter ballots. These students were told that the ballots were mailed, but many never arrived and the election came, and then it went. The students, meanwhile, have filed an official complaint with the Commissioner of Canada Elections. And today might be Donald Trump's 100th day in office, with 1,300 more to go. But today is also International Dance Day, an annual celebration of how dancing positively impacts our lives. The human body's ability to move, groove, and boogie down has captivated the way we interact with music and express ourselves artistically. So on behalf of all of us here at the GBH Foundation, we wish you a day full of joyful steps and happy beats. Sports. Let's hope the Celtics have some happy steps tonight. They are one win away from the next round of the playoffs. Game 5 with the Orlando Magic is tonight at the Garden. Red Sox are in Canada tonight, which is not the 51st state, to open a series with the Blue Jays in Toronto. It is 77 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Think or Swim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow and Friday. On May 9th, we're going to be joined by Governor Maura Healey, and May 13th, we're going to be joined by Attorney General Andrea Campbell. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the reporting project All Over the Map. And I watched one from a border state last night, which we're going to talk to him about,
Arizona.
which was just spectacular. John, it's great to see you.
I'm glad to be here on International Dance Day. I'm sure that's exactly why I'm here.
I did not
As a matter of fact, it is
International
amazing.
Dance Day. Well, Jim's going to do a few steps for
Oh,
everybody
that's
before we
cute.
leave
Okay,
today.
good.
So John King, 100 days into the president's term, not great results from the polls yesterday, but Trump is not blaming himself, from what I understand, for any of the poll numbers.
He is not, and he will not, and he's going to go to Michigan today, to Macomb County, and to say that he's recreating the golden age of American manufacturing, and be patient because things are going to be amazing. I will tell you that at the 100-day mark, his polling numbers are miserable. It's just a fact. As you mentioned, Jim mentioned the Arizona piece. I was just traveling there. In our travels, we're hearing this from people, and they tell it in a much more powerful and personal way than the numbers do. But the most striking part to me at 100 days in is the president has taken his greatest asset, which is the view that he can best handle the economy, that he can best direct the economy. Even some people who voted for Kamala Harris said that in the last election, that they still thought Trump was better able to handle the economy. His strength is now a glaring weakness. 6 in 10 Americans say that their prices are going up still, or they're not getting better. The cost of living is not going down, and they blame Trump policies. They don't just say it's not getting better. They say his policies are making it worse. And they say globally, the bigger question of how are economic conditions, again, 6 in 10 Americans say they're getting worse, and they blame his policy. So it's not just he's the guy in office and things aren't getting better yet. People are directly tying to what they see as he promised to fix things, he hasn't, and they're blaming him, is the most simple way to put it.
You know, with the exception of this thing that he's, I guess, allegedly doing today around auto tariffs and bringing them down, and your own station is saying this followed his talking to some of the auto CEOs. My observation is even when things are horrible, and of course he did say on Truth Social that he's calling for an investigation because obviously it's not true.
The pollsters.
The pollsters, I'm sorry, thanks. The pollsters. Normal politicians would do a 180 carefully, subtly, as best they could. He seems on some of these things to just be doubling down as if he's not paying attention. But, you know what I'm trying to say. Is that a fair summary?
I think you're trying to say it as fairly as you can. I think one of the problems here is it appears like they are doing, again, at least a retreat at the moment on auto tariffs.
Yeah.
However, the problem, Jim, the reason that they've lost their credibility on Wall Street, they've lost their credibility in corporate boardrooms, not just in Detroit at the Big Three, but in other corporate boardrooms around the country. And most importantly, they've lost their credibility on these questions with the American people, even though this was, again, Donald Trump's greatest strength 100 days ago, is that they keep changing their mind. They keep saying different things. So today it does look like they're going to have somewhat of a retreat on the question of auto tariffs because we've seen the turmoil that has caused. However, he has changed his mind so many times on these questions that it's really hard to say, oh, this time, let's lock this in. This is now going to be the policy for at least 3 months or at least 6 months. And so he's going to do something today. But let me just put this out there, and we'll see if I'm right when we meet next Tuesday. Mark Carney was just elected prime minister. Well, his party, the Liberals, won in Canada. He's going to have to form a coalition government, but Mark Carney is going to stay on as prime minister of Canada. The president of the United States, of course, did not want that. He's the reason it happened by insulting Canada all the time and by using these tariffs again. But so Mark Carney has said he's going to stand up to the United States and he's going to protect Canadian automakers. So we're not done here is the point I'm trying to make, is that whatever the White House said today, I think you can bet whether it's because of friction with Canada or some other trade relationship around the world, the problem has been, and this came up over and over again in our travels, most recently in Arizona, is that they just keep changing their mind. It makes it impossible to plan. And if you can't plan, whether it's your family budget or your giant corporate budget, you get mad and you get frustrated. And he's now the piñata.
Since you mentioned Mark, can we do Carney for a second here?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Here is Mark Carney, Canada's Mark Carney, Liberal Party, as John said, part of his acceptance speech last night.
As I've been warning for months, America wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never, ever happen.
John, as you know, we mentioned this yesterday. The conservatives were ahead by roughly 25 points right around the time that so-called Liberation Day was happening with the tariffs. Obviously, they lost yesterday. We talked to an expert in Mexico yesterday. Claudia Scheinbaum's numbers have gone up once she decided to not allow Kristi Noem to do these vicious ads about we will hunt you down on Mexican television. Zelensky's numbers went up after the thing in the Oval Office. So the earlier story was how the election of Trump is empowering autocrats around the world. We now have a totally different story from the last several weeks.
And the Canadian guy the other guy was pretty Trumpy. He was,
exactly.
That lost.
So I made 2 trips to Canada in the last couple of months, one to British Columbia, more recently to Ontario, which is the largest of the 10 provinces. And they feel betrayed. This is a crossroads moment for Canadians. And some people just let this get caught up in the, Trump wants to make it the 51st state. Trump keeps insulting their governor. That's a great political story. And it can be even kind of fun sometimes, I guess. It is so insulting to the Canadians that the President of the United States, this President of the United States, has decided to take a relationship that for decades has been neighborly and productive and economically beneficial to both countries, and to make it so nasty and petty and threatening. So when Prime Minister Carney says they want our land, he has every reason to say that. Trump has said 51st state. So Canada, this is not just about defying Trump and letting the Liberals hold power. This is about the voters, the voters I spoke to there, whether they were Green Party voters or conservative voters, say Canada needs to raise its defense spending. Canada needs to enforce its own border. Canada needs to look around the world for new trading partners. Canada cannot rely and should not even think first about doing business with its neighbor. Now that makes the most sense, right? If you and Marjorie if you had to do a trade deal, Jim, your first client should be Marjorie. She's right across the table. It's easy to do. The costs are lower to get it done. You're friends. And so you build that relationship. Canada says, never mind. And so this has huge consequences, not just in the moment that we lose this friend and country with shared values, but next time you see a house being built If there's wood involved,
Yeah.
that's most likely Canadian timber. We get a lot of aluminum from Canada. Farmers get a lot of potash from Canada. We get a lot of energy from Canada. If Canada finds new markets for those products, and then the United States, let's say either Trump gets worn down or Trump has gone off the scene, the United States says, we want to buy it, it might not be available. And so this one, nobody in Canada can fathom. This was working, and Trump essentially insulted Canada into this. He has created, you mentioned Mexico, he has created this wave of nationalism in Canada, and I think you're seeing this to a lesser degree maybe in Mexico, but where Canadians of all stripes who used to fight over should Quebec secede?
Right.
Why are all the elitists on the coast of Canada and we're in the middle? Canadians of all stripes saying band together, reach consensus in Canada, stand up to that guy, and take this country in a different direction. That has enormous consequences, both culturally, from neighboring democracies, but I would argue economically, because Canada is so important. We're hugely important to their economy, but I think Americans sometimes forget the other part. They're hugely important to ours too, and there's got to be a price to be paid for this.
We're talking to John King from CNN. So you mentioned going out to Arizona. We're going to talk about Arizona. I'm going to start off with some sound. This is a woman who voted for Donald Trump, Tamara Varga, and she was talking to you about Trump's cuts. Here she is.
I'm worried about Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security. He did say that he wasn't going to cut them, that he was just going to find the waste, and I really hope that he sticks to that.
Why is that so important to you?
It's important because we need to take care of our people with disabilities and our elderly and those that depend on it. And they can't survive as it is right now, and we cannot cut.
We don't really know what's going to happen with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, I don't think, do we? I mean, she's got a reason to be concerned.
Is a defining question of the second 100 days, as the House Republicans, Senate Republicans now need to pass a budget. Speaker Johnson came back yesterday and said they're going to increase funding for the Pentagon, increase funding for the border. Well, there's no way to do that and meet your spending cut target without touching Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. The math just doesn't exist. You could cut every other federal program, and you would not come up with enough money to meet their target unless you get into Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So they're going to have to do it. We'll see what the program impact is. Again, I'm not smart enough, but I don't know anybody in this town, whether they're from the most conservative think tank or the most liberal think tank, who thinks there's that much waste, fraud, and abuse. Can you find some? Yes. Can you tinker some rules? Yes. Can you find that amount of money? So that's why people like Tamara Varga, she's a hero. I think also a lot of times in Washington and New York, a lot of Trump voters are mischaracterized. This is a Christian conservative. She has 2 kids with autism. She has a candy store, a food truck, and now she's opening a restaurant to hire people with special needs.
Yeah.
To give them meaning in their lives. And she laughed. She said she's having a problem because other businesses keep hiring her workers because she trains them up to a point where they're so good that fast food restaurants and others are hiring away. This woman is doing remarkable work, right? And she knows that some of the programs that help her come from grants from Washington, come through Medicare and Medicaid. She sees these families struggling to keep things together, and then she hears people in Washington say, we may have to cut these programs. So it's proof to me that even she's a lifelong Republican. Before the election, she was right. She told me she thought Trump was going to do better in Tucson this time. She thought he was going to do better among Latinos. She was dead right about those things. She hasn't given up yet, but there were a lot of buts and a lot of I'm watching this. And a lot of if he doesn't keep this promise, not only might I turn on him, but other people are going to turn on him too. So we talked about a very consequential 100 days. They actually have to make some huge decisions in the next 100 days. And I think that for the president, and he's weaker now too, the Republicans from these competitive districts know he's weaker. And so are they going to stand up to him as they try to go through these incredibly hard decisions? So I think the next 200 days are actually going to be more interesting. And when it comes to federal spending, much more consequential than the first 100. And the first 100 have not been a cakewalk.
You know, John, speaking of 100 days, as we've mentioned, a bunch of news organizations did polling around the 100 days, including obviously CNN. One of them was New York Times Siena. When the New York Times, and they're all comparable numbers. When the New York Times Siena poll came out, Nate Cohn from the Times did an analysis that said in part that it's hard to shake the public's perception of you after 100 days. I didn't express that well. Is that if you are at a certain level of standing, it's hard to change that dramatically no matter what you do. Do you subscribe to that notion based on history, John King?
Yes, I do. I very much do. Now, Donald Trump has defied political gravity and
True.
rewritten the rules before. So if there's anyone who could do it, I would leave open the possibility it is him. However, ask Joe Biden. Just ask Joe Biden. So the combination of being invisible, not seeming to be on top of the cost of living and inflation pressures on the American people, and then the exclamation point was Joe Biden was supposed to be not only a guy of great competence, but a guy of great foreign policy competence. Then you had the Afghanistan withdrawal that, I know Donald Trump set that up for progressives out there listening. Joe Biden in some ways had no choice, but they also did not handle it very well. I think that's just a factual statement, and Biden never recovered. Biden never recovered. And so I think the risk for Trump is, we talked about this during the Biden administration, if people think you're not up for the job, right, just on a threshold question, we ask about the economy, we ask about immigration, we ask about this, we ask about that, but just come up here. If people do not think you are up to the job, right, then all your other numbers go down. Donald Trump is underwater in our poll right now on immigration. Donald Trump has never been underwater on immigration, right? Because people have always thought, he's the guy who's going to be the toughest guy on the border. So how is he underwater on immigration? Some of it could well be the tone and the mistakes they've made in these deportations. I'm not discounting that. But I think it's that people just see, wait a minute, we disapprove of your overall performance. We disapprove profoundly of your biggest promise, which was to fix the economy and get prices down. And therefore, everything then goes under because they've just made the decision, this is not what I bought. This product is not what I bought. It doesn't do what it told me it was going to do, and that can be, again, let's give it the second 100 days before we put a nail in it or pour the cement in it. But I think Nate raises a very interesting point that the American people tend to make an assessment, and it's really hard, especially in this polarized age, to get them to move off once they lock in on something.
You know what I also thought was really interesting is how many people, and it was a majority, did not approve of what happened to Abrego Garcia. It's over that the Trump administration lawyer admitted was a mistake. Then he got fired for admitting it was a mistake. But anyway, that this man should never have been sent to this El Salvador maximum security prison. He's in a different prison now. But in any case, that story broke through.
I was amazed too.
And I thought, it was so unjust and so un-American, really. It seems to, in these polls I read yesterday, people were upset by that.
And you're seeing even a fair amount of Republicans. Trump has kept, if you look at like the hardcore questions for Trump, it's in the low to mid 30s now, right? That's your mega base. Your mega base is anywhere from 30, maybe 35%, somewhere in there. But he's lost some other people in there. And that is incredibly consequential for him and his political standing. It's also incredibly consequential as Republicans now have to make decisions going forward, heading into the midterm cycle about trying to protect their own hides, if you will. Do you stand up to Trump? Well, if you do that, he's going to primary you. And, so he made, his national standing, overall standing is way down, but he still has that mega base. So if you're a Republican, it's like, which side of the coin, right? He's weakened. Do I stand up to him? But he still leads that base, which can get you in a primary. But back to the specifics of the question. Look, I think a number of things. Even a lot of Republicans, right? Remember, Republicans pre-Trump were the constitutional conservative party.
Right.
That's what they used to say. Right. And so there's supposed to be a system. There's supposed to be a process. If you listen to that Arizona piece, Ray Flores is the restaurateur there. He's a cranky independent, disgusted with both parties. He just talks about how it's haphazard.
Yeah.
They don't have a plan. And it seems mean-spirited. Right?
Yes. Yes.
You can be conservative. You can be tough on immigration. You can want to deport those who you can prove have committed crimes. You can be all of those things and still be a person of grace and kindness, and when people see the mean-spirited part, that does affect people. It gets them to say no, do these things, but not with such an attitude.
Yeah.
And so I think we've talked about this before in the sense that when people saw he could not run the government competently during COVID, that was the undoing of Donald Trump 1.0. So this competence, it's not just what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. And I think that's a huge risk for Trump 2.0.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We mentioned in these polls that Democrats are not doing particularly well either. A lot of people think that the Democrats don't know what they're doing. But this Governor J.B. Pritzker has gotten a lot of play in this very animated speech he gave at the New Hampshire Democratic Party. And, of course, New Hampshire's, are they still going to be the first ones at the primaries?
I was just going to jump in on that. Who's going to change are they going to change the rules back, or is that a trip to nowhere?
I don't know. But in any case, here's a little sound from Pritzker talking up in New Hampshire.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box.
Okay, so he wouldn't answer whether he's going to run for president again. It looks like he is going to run for, run for president. Did he run before? I don't think so. Run for president. But in any case, where are the Democrats now? We've seen Sanders, Bernie Sanders, and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez running around the country to big crowds. But are the Democrats still in deep trouble, or is Pritzker and AOC and Sanders getting them to turn around, or what's going on?
The party globally does not have a great brand right now. They just lost an election, and a lot of their base is very mad. A lot of their base wants them to do exactly what Governor Pritzker is talking about. Be more visible, show more fight, have more protest, have more resistance. He's running for president. I would say that he hasn't run before, but I would put him in the column of I know he hasn't said so yet, but he's running until he's not now. Yeah. When you go to New Hampshire, you start giving speeches like that. You are showing your intentions, and that's how you do it, right? So he's getting out there. Democrats are going to have a 2-year cycle, essentially, through the 2026 midterms for these people to audition. I will tell you in my travels that the Sanders AOC oligarchy tour has some traction. I try not to bring these things up with people. I just ask, how are the Democrats doing? Anybody standing out to you? Anybody you're mad at? Just because I don't want to tee something up for a voter. I want what's reaching them. And several, when I was out in Arizona, mentioned the AOC and Bernie. I think she's an interesting figure to lead this charge. She represents, I think, the people wanting to have more of a fight. Can she be the president of the United States? I'm not saying that, but I think that's what we're going to go through for the next 12 months to 18 months will set the stage for then what becomes the 2-year, 1.5-year effort to become the nominee. But in this, the sort of off-Broadway pre-run for this show, that's what you're seeing in Governor Pritzker, AOC, Governor Beshear, some other people we're not even thinking about. Greg Caesar's a congressman from Texas who's the head of the Progressive Conference. He's been going around to Republican districts. I'm not saying they're all going to run for president, but they're all testing different themes. And there is a debate in the Democratic Party about whether you want to be out there protesting every day or whether you just want to step back and watch the Republicans cast those votes I just talked about, right? Just get out of the way and watch them. Go ahead. That's your spending target? Okay, do it without cutting Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. Go for it, boys and girls. There are some Democrats who say just get out of the way. They're lighting themselves on fire. Don't interfere. But we'll watch as this all plays out.
One last thing, forget the presidential race, move back to the midterms for a second. One poll, I don't know if it was yours or one of the others that came out this week, said, despite the horrible numbers for Trump, who do you prefer to deal with, I think, your problems in general? And congressional Democrats or Trump, and Trump prevailed 37-30. But history suggests in midterms, this is a question, not a statement, John, that all you have to be is not him when a president is unpopular in midterms elections. That's correct, isn't it?
Correct. Been doing this for 40 years, and I cannot think of a time, maybe right after 9/11, when you go into a midterm election, and George W. Bush was actually quite popular then, so it actually proves the rule. But the president of the United States and his approval rating is the North Star of the midterm election. It just is and always has been. That doesn't mean in any particular state there's not something going on, or any particular district there might be something going on locally that changes that a little bit. But nationally, the president's approval rating is the North Star of any midterm election. This president's approval rating is horrible. And if the election were tomorrow, the Democrats would get the House back. They just would. That doesn't mean they're going to, in November of 2026. Remember, the Republicans not only have at the moment a president with a miserable approval rating, they have the tiniest House majority in memory. And so, and a lot of those districts, there are enough districts out there just where either Harris won and Republicans won, or Trump just barely won and Republicans won. There are plenty of purple districts out there for this to happen. That's a long way to go. But as I said, as Republicans go into these policy debates, they are dealing with the here and now. And the here and now is their president's numbers are horrible. And if they were on the ballot tomorrow, they would be punished for it.
So, John King, before you go, I assume other than brand new listeners, people know you're from Dorchester, big Boston sports fan. Marjorie pretended for the last 20 minutes with you that she was into the serious issues of the day. But the only thing she really wants to know with you is the following. As a faithful fan of, let's pick a team, the Patriots, for example. What did you think of the interview that Coach Belichick did on CBS Sunday morning? Look at John King's face. What did you think, John King? Look at him. Look at him.
He did to borrow some Belichickian, he did his job, right? Or he did the job he came to do,
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gives us plenty of material, even when he doesn't say much, Jim.
Yeah, doesn't say much.
We need most of the time we need people to keep talking to give us enough material. Sometimes the hoodie just does it with his silence or his own face. Or
with a girlfriend. Yeah, exactly.
It is what it is.
Yeah. John, you're a very careful person when it counts most. By the way, I want to say again, the all over the map stuff in Canada and Arizona really gives people a feel of this country, I think, and its politics better than anything. Congratulations, and it's great to see you, John.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the reporting project All Over the Map. And it is one of my favorites because, like that woman that he spoke
Tamara
with.
Vega totally humanized this woman.
Yeah, and there were at least two other gentlemen he spoke with, maybe three. There were quite a few anyway.
Great.
So coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to open, no, we're already past the 1 o'clock news. We're going to open up next. We're going to open the phone and text lines to get your thoughts on the early morning wake-up club.
That's correct, Marjorie.
That's right. Jim swears by his 5:22.
5:22.
And wait, why 5:22? Why not
I really don't know.
5:24?
I don't know. That's when my alarm goes off.
Okay, that gives him plenty of time to offload his anxiety onto Jamie.
That's not true,
via
by the way.
text.
That's really not true.
Now, usually you wait till 6. Every morning, wake up club, and do you buy this idea of you feel better about yourself if you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, as President Trump hits 100 days in office, local activists are holding a major protest. And Harvard University has been credited for pushing back against President Trump, but now it's changing the name of its DEI office to take out the DEI. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And North Shore Music Theater, presenting The Shark is Broken, a behind-the-scenes comedy of the making of Jaws, on stage at Bill Haney's North Shore Music Theater, May 2nd through 11th. Ticket information at nsmt.org. And Zimmons, since 1909, fabrics, furnishings, reupholstery, and custom window treatments. Spring event now in progress. More information about Zimmons Design Services and their spring event at zimmons.com or at their showroom in Lynn.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBHnews. American men love to tell people how early they wake up in the morning. Rising before dawn has become sort of some symbol of exceptionalism, productivity, and even moral superiority. And I have to say, I'm with the likes of Apple's Tim Cook, or as Trump calls him, Tim Apple, and that billionaire Brian Johnson, who's using, did you read this, his own son as a blood buddy for longevity, whatever. Maybe not the blood transfusions,
this
but
is a weird guy.
I'm really weird. I love an early morning wake-up time. The silence at 5:22, which is when my alarm is set every Monday to Friday. I have no idea why. Allows for real tranquility. I let that wash over for me for about 30 seconds before I start texting the producers and Marjorie. That's actually not true. I'm going to tell what the truth is in a minute.
What's the truth, Jim?
So I'm going to tell you in a minute. So the phone and text lines are open at 877-301-8970. Are you among the growing cohort, not just of men in America, opting for, I don't know, a 4:30 or 5 a.m. wake up to get a head start on the day before you go into work? If yes, what do you do during that time? If no, let us know. Maybe you're a mother, and the concept of getting up early to plan your day is something you've unassumingly been doing since the beginning of time without the need for any Wall Street Journal fanfare about it. Or you're more of a night person, sleeping the day away is your version of heaven. Either way, give us a call, 877-301-8097. You know, all these articles talk about how you get up early, you have time to work out, to do some reading, to do whatever, despite the fact that I do send an occasional text to our coworkers and you early in the morning. The vast majority of what I do between 5:22, don't make a face, Jamie, between 5:22 and maybe 6:45, you know what I do for the most part?
What do you do, Jim?
Nothing. I sit in my favorite chair in my house and relax, because here's my thinking, way ahead of the Wall Street Journal. If you get up early and you ease into the day, rather than getting up like 10 minutes before you got to start making your breakfast and taking a shower and getting to work, your day is going to be that much more organized and sane and not stressful. And if you rush into your day, the whole thing gets screwed up.
You know, that's one of the things I think is it makes sense about this. Talking about not rushing, that's a big thing.
Huge.
But they also talk about how it can improve your self-confidence, feel like an accomplishment, because you don't feel like you're constantly in a rush to get everything done.
And you're always behind all day.
And I think that's a big thing. I also think when you have children, it's so much nicer to get up before they do, so you have like an hour or two to do what you want to do before, you know, mommy kind of thing when their kids are little, or just the rush of trying to get everybody ready for school. So I get it, but you got to go to bed awfully early to do this. You don't want to sacrifice sleep, Jim.
No,
you don't want to be staying up till
is a real
11 o'clock.
problem.
But meanwhile, there are these very odd people like this Brian Johnson guy.
Do we need to go into him? What is he doing, blood sucking or something?
He's doing some weird thing with his son, but he talks about how he wakes up naturally, of course, between 4:30 and 6, starts his day with temperature checks, UV light exposure to align with his circadian rhythms. Supplementation includes iron, vitamin C, 60-plus other tailored nutrients, blue light therapy, eye care routines, red light therapy, and meals that are nutrient-dense and vegan and part of an intermittent fasting regime. He seems to be going a little bit overboard, wouldn't you say?
What time do you get up?
About 5:45 or 6.
And what do you do when you get up?
I get up, I'm a meditator. I get up and I get my coffee and I do my meditating.
How long do you meditate for?
Like 40 minutes.
Wow.
And then I read.
Wow.
I read my stuff for, because it makes me less nervous.
Do you feel, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I will briefly, do you not feel a need during meditation to respond to my texts? Does that destroy the mood? Or
you know,
does
it's a wonderful thing. You put your phone on silent.
You
and
do?
you know no one can reach you. It's
That
a
really
wonderful. I like that.
aggravates
The
me.
problem is I forget to take it off silent, and
what a
then
shock.
I know that's the problem. You have to
And can I
remember
be
to take it
clear
off
here? The
silent.
522 thing, everybody asks me that question when I say
Yeah,
that.
you should say-
I have no idea how it got started.
Yeah, that's
522.
weird, Jim. It should either be 5:20 or 5:25.
Well, it's 522. I get up
Okay.
at 522
All right.
every day, and I'm telling you, I want to say it again. This is one of the few things in terms of how I handle my day that I know I have right. If you ease, let me say it again. If you ease into the day, and you're not
Ease into the day.
exactly, and you're not rushing into the day to begin with, the odds of succeeding in that day, and success may be just feeling decent, by the way, or go up exponentially. Do you agree with that, or you do not?
I do it.
You hate rushing, right?
I try to rush less now that I'm older. I used to be late for everything when I was young, and I'm not like that anymore. Thanks to you, actually. You're the one
welcome.
that told me to get there early and you feel much better. Here's an anonymous texter who says, it's just like the old Folgers jingle.
That's a coffee
Best
company.
part of waking up is reading Trump effed up.
The original ad was the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup, for those who are a little too young for that. 877-301-8097. We want to talk about your relationship to morning. If you do get up early, why do you do it? What do you do? And if you don't get up early, why do you not do that?
And here's another texture that says the gym opens at 4 a.m. and I'm there to get that chore out of the way. No excuses to skip it like there might be in the afternoon. A lot of gyms are open 24/7 now. And the story talks about people getting there really early in the morning.
Big
like
mistake.
at 4:30. It's not crowded. They have their choice of the machines. And they.
But you're rushing already.
Well, they're not rushing. That's why they get there early, because they don't want to have to wait in line for the certain machines they like to use. And, you know, if you wait till the end of the day to exercise, you come up with a million excuses about why you can't do it.
Well, you know
don't
what? What's a better solution than doing the morning or waiting the end of the day?
Yeah.
Wait till the next day. That's basically been my approach to exercise, and it's worked very well for me.
Let's go to Anna in Middleborough. What do you think, Anna?
Hello, Anna.
I love getting up early in the morning.
Why?
It's peaceful, and I start the day reading the obituaries.
Jesus. That's really relaxing.
I've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
No, and then I have breakfast in bed. And I love seeing the sun come up.
Well,
now,
what is
why
the
do you
joy?
what's the obituary part?
Yeah.
I draw inspiration.
Oh, okay.
From dead people?
Well, some people have interesting lives.
Oh, they do. I like to read them,
that's
too.
true.
I think that'd be a great job, actually, in newspaper.
How
to be
about
the obit
reading about a
writer.
living
Brian
person?
Marquand, who does them at the Globe.
Well, I go on to read the news.
You do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
what time do you get
that's
up?
how I start my day.
Okay, what time do you get up?
Between 4:30 and 5.
Okay.
You know,
All
what's,
right,
you know
Anna,
what's
thank
very
you for
annoying
the
about
call.
obituaries now,
No,
though?
I don't know.
More and more people are saying they didn't want to reveal the cause of death.
I don't like that.
I want to know.
I do too.
I know. Was it
It's funny
cancer?
you say that.
Was it heart disease?
I read
Was
the
it a
beginning
stroke?
and the end to see why they
Yeah,
died.
that's right. But
Because I want to
somehow,
see if I have that.
you know how you figure it out, though?
What's
you
that?
go down to the bottom, and they
Yeah.
say, in lieu of flowers, send your donation to. And you
Yeah.
figure if it was the American Cancer Society,
You're so
Member Heart
sly.
Association, Diabetes. I know, I tell you. I sniffed that right out, Jim, and figured out how it happened. But
Did
I
you
wish
read
they-
the thing last night about they finally did the autopsy results on Gene Hackman? He hadn't eaten in days. I mean, it's just really a sad, horrible.
Yeah.
He died of heart failure. And
The
we know
weirdest
he had,
part of that, though, is how
is
his
the rat
wife
thing?
died.
The
That
rat
weird
thing.
rodent
Yeah, the rat
disease
thing.
infestation, where she was well enough that day to go get the dog at the vet and to
Yeah.
run her errands. Then she obviously didn't feel well
Yeah.
because she was going to the bathroom to have some aspirin. And then she just collapsed on the floor.
Yeah, that caller loved that obituary, by the way.
Yeah, that
the
was
rat dropping obituary was really gave her a big jolt into the day.
All right. Okay.
Only kidding.
877-301-8970. David in Rhode Island. Thank you for calling.
Hello, David.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hey, I told the phone answerer that I used to be Eric the Whistler's next door neighbor.
He's become a celebrity on our show over the last couple of months. It's true. What's he really like? What is Eric the Whistler really like, David?
Well, I could not tell you that.
Okay, fine.
It would be wrong.
Okay, when do you get up?
Yeah, sometimes, well, this is what I do. So I get up at 5:30. I have some strong coffee, and I write a poem, and then I go back to sleep until a reasonable hour.
That is. Do you really do that? You write a poem?
Yeah.
That is fabulous.
Oh, okay.
That is
David,
fabulous.
thank you
David,
for that
thanks.
call.
Can I add something? Because David, one of the most important things, other than solitude, for at least a part of that first hour and a half that I'm up before you mock me.
We have some questions about you, Jim.
I knew it was about me. Is a strong cup of coffee when you're
it's
by
very
yourself
important,
in
very
the morning.
important.
How great is that?
Very important.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
here's a texter. Wait, so this version of Jim that we're all stuck with is the calm, eased into the day guy? Imagine if he didn't
that's so
ease
funny.
in. And another
That's
texter
true, by the way.
wants to know, does Jim make
Oh,
his
God.
bed and tuck in his dickie to start the day?
I'd be careful with that.
Our
Thank you.
listeners are very concerned
They're
with
dickie
Jim's
obsessed.
dickie wearing.
They really
and
are.
we have a picture of him with a dickie at his
We
bar
do?
mitzvah.
No, we don't.
It's very embarrassing.
I didn't. It's not.
He wore a dickie at his bar mitzvah. His mother told him
Yeah,
not
how
to do it.
immature you are, by the way. I mean this in the nicest
and he
way.
said this would make
you
him
are
look
so
cool.
childish.
The
do you know?
girls in the bar mitzvah class
Jordan
would think that was
Hudson
great.
and Dickies is what keeps Marjorie going.
I'm not talking about this.
I know. Well, you aren't, but she is.
Okay,
Steve in
in
Jamestown.
Jamestown. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Steve.
Hey, how you doing?
I think we're quite well.
I
Thank you.
run a bake. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I run a bakery. And I'm up every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And it's the best part of the day. From the time I'm up, I have a quick cup of coffee. I go into work. I have a peaceful, productive few hours. Then the customers get there and ruin everything. Then I go home. I'm in bed by 8 o'clock.
What's the
On
name of your
vacation,
What's that?
I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm on vacation.
Wow.
It's the greatest thing in the world. To go to a new city, to get up early and walk around fast and watch how that city wakes up. It's so awesome.
That is great.
Sunrises and magnificent.
Steve, what's the name of your bakery and where is it?
called Slice of Heaven in Jamestown, Rhode Island.
Slice of
Very
Heaven,
nice.
Jamestown, Rhode Island. What time do you open?
7.
7. Go say hi to Steve. Slice of Heaven. Steve, thanks for your call. That was great.
Okay, Kathy says this is an old farmer saying, an hour in the morning is worth 3 in the afternoon.
Is that true?
I don't know, Jim.
Oh, well, that
That's
makes
what
sense
Kathy
to me.
says. Okay, let's go to Channing in Dartmouth. Hi, Channing.
Hey, Channing.
Hi, first time, long time.
Thank you.
My dog trained me to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
When she was a puppy, she got up at 5 at first light, and I've been getting up at 5 since 12 years ago.
So were you upset when the dog was waking you in the beginning?
The first day, it bothered me, and then I said, hey, you could change my life. And after that, I went to bed between 8 and 9 for the rest of the time.
And what you sound like you have a little bit of joy in your voice about the 5 a.m. deal. What appeals to you about getting up that early, Channing?
It's absolutely the best time of the day. I read Heather Cox Richardson first thing.
Love her.
I then read the New York Times and the HuffPost, and I finish with Wordle.
Oh, very good.
He's got a plan. You know what,
He's got a
Channing?
plan.
That's a great call. Thank you for making your first call there. You know what? He has a routine for how he spends his time in the morning. Like I think almost everybody who gets up early, I should have said this too, has a routine that they follow almost religiously every single day. You sound like you do too, pretty much.
I do. I get very upset if I miss it. The day doesn't start right if you don't do it that way, at least for me. Here's Rebecca in Florida. Maybe Jim gets up too early because that serenity and peace he claims he feels by easing into the day has clearly worn off by 11:06.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's very good. That's very good.
You know, the
I like
guy
it.
who said made fun of me before, in all seriousness,
With the
I
Dickies,
would be
a lot of
far
Dickies
worse.
texts.
No, not the Dickie.
There are a lot of them.
I would be a far worse if I didn't have that start to my day.
Thank God you're getting
Thank
up
God.
early, Jim. That's all I could say. Mel in Gloucester says, the thing is that people who are early risers act like they're superior human beings
There's
compared to the rest of
truth to
us.
that.
And
There is
there
truth
is
to that.
the truth to that. It's like, you know, the early bird gets the worm thing. And like this story talks about that people feel like they're better
I
if they
agree
get
with
up
that.
early in the morning. On the other hand, if you have struggles to feel like you're getting anything done, it can help you feel like you're getting something done. If you can do something first thing in the morning, then it helps you to do things later in the day. That is a theory, at least, Jim.
But you don't get enough sleep. I should just say to you, if you get up at 5:45, as you say,
Mhm.
which is only like 25 minutes or thereabouts later than me, I go to bed far earlier than you do. What time do you go to bed
Well, if
most
you go
nights?
to bed at 10:30, that's not bad.
That's not a lot of sleep.
Well, it's
That's
11:30,
10:30,
12:30,
7
1:30,
hours
2:30,
is not
3:30,
enough.
4:30, 5:30.
7
yeah,
hours.
Yeah, it's almost 7.5.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It's not 7.5.
Okay,
Whatever
it's
it
close.
is.
It's
Okay,
close.
fine. Let's go to Joanne in Dorchester. We're talking about morning time, and if you're a morning kind of person, good morning. I mean, good afternoon, Joanne. Hi. Oops.
Well, hi, you two. First of all, I want to know if Belichick's new girlfriend. Oh, I'm hearing a weird echo.
That's okay. It's our fault. Go ahead.
apologize.
We're fine on this end. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to know if Belichick's new girlfriend made him start getting up in the morning when he used to like to get up late, or vice versa.
Well, next
Oh.
time she's on, we'll ask her, Joanne.
And
Jordan
she'll say,
Hudson.
no, we're not going there.
We're not going there.
I'm not
We're not
answering
talking about that. Go ahead, Joanne.
I'm a night person, and I've been one as long as I can remember. I gave up my nap as a young kid. I always slept as late as anybody would let me, even when I was, with a teenager and a child. And I'm still like that. And there is evidence that it's at least partly genetic.
Yeah,
So
I believe
to
that.
Go against it, to try to go against it is kind of like saying, I'm going to try to be tall when I'm short.
Have you tried?
I have when I had jobs that I had to get up for like at 9 o'clock every day and commute, but I never liked it, and I always tried to arrange my work if I could, so that I could get to work at like 10 or 11 and work till 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, Jim, it's not true that you can't start the day slowly if you get up late. It depends on your working hours.
That's
so
right.
If I start my day, which I try to do at like 12, and I get up at 10, I still have my quiet time and I ease into the day.
Well, you're totally right, but most people, you'd agree, Joanne, don't have the flexibility that you're lucky enough or strong enough to have.
But I do
people
think
have their normal
it's.
I agree
hours.
with that. Yes,
Yeah.
you're totally right. You're totally right.
I mean,
Joanne, thanks for the
think
call.
of
We appreciate it.
your friends and your family. There
Yeah.
are people that are night owls, and there are
Yeah.
people that are morning people. I think it's like that almost from the word go.
Well, I was a night person. When I lived in New York City, for example, law school and after law school, I mean, that woman or man or somebody talked about
Yep.
how great it is to walk around places like he's on vacation or wherever it is. Walking around New York City at night is one of the great thrills of all time. But
Yeah.
that's when I was younger and
Well,
there. And,
I mean,
you know,
but you look at teenagers. I mean, if you have teenagers will sleep until 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday. They have a chance, right? They'll just. It's like part of that stage of life. I mean,
well, that's why school should start later, by the way.
well, some of them do. Now listen to this, Lois and Webster. She
Oh, yeah.
says, "I get up early and make believe I'm single for a while."
That's a pretty good one.
I like that one.
That's a really good
Ken
one.
in Swansea, what do you think, Ken?
Hello, Ken. That's funny.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I get up, I'm retired, and I get up. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I get up late in the morning, but I go to bed very early at night, and it's all part of my self-induced diet plan, in which it leaves me much less time to eat.
Yeah.
And I also want to say it doesn't work, by the way.
Oh, that's too bad.
You just pack it into a shorter
That's too
period of
bad.
time, right?
Yeah, you do. And I always do make sure in the morning I get up in time, like 10-ish or so, to walk the dog and then to listen to your show.
Oh, my God.
Oh, thank you.
Ken, that was exactly the
dog
right thing to
walking
say. Thank you.
Can change everything.
It can?
Yeah, if you have a dog, you got to get up, and walk the
Yeah.
dog, right? You can't wait till like 10:00 in the morning
Yeah,
to get
okay.
up. Okay. Oh, someone just said that they went to Slice in Heaven in Jamestown, Rhode Island. The caller that called earlier has the best blueberry sourdough pancakes.
Oh.
Says Holly in Middleton, Rhode
That's
Island.
incredible.
Or Middletown.
That's
Is it
another great
Middletown
thing
or
to do.
Middleton?
I don't know.
Have sourdough pancakes?
Yeah, Brett, what do you eat in the morning at home? Anything?
I don't get hungry in the morning.
Yeah?
No, I got to be up for a few hours before I get hungry. So I wait till later. Anne in Cambridge. What do you think, Anne?
Hello, Anne.
Hi. First time, short time.
Thanks.
I retired in May, so I've been listening to you since May.
We're glad you're with
And
us.
I have to build my day around the 3 hours.
Wow.
And it's a problem. It's a problem
Sorry.
to build your day around. But anyway, that's not why I'm calling.
Why are you calling?
So a few minutes ago, someone mentioned about obituaries that don't indicate the cause of death.
Yes.
Marjorie, yeah.
And about 6 weeks ago in the Globe, there was an obituary that referenced that. And I cut out part of it because I thought it was so clever. Can I just read it? It's short.
Sure.
The gentleman's name is Paul. So at the end of the obituary, they wrote, one of Paul's pet peeves was obituaries that didn't list the cause of death. His curiosity couldn't handle it. So for those who like Paul, here it is. He put up a strong and courageous fight against glioblastoma. As in all things in life, Paul was vastly outperformed his expectations for his diagnosis and approached every challenge with his signature humor and health.
Oh.
Who wrote that?
That's lovely.
Who wrote that?
His family.
Okay.
His family. But so one of Paul's pet peeves was obituaries that didn't list the cause of death.
There you go.
His curiosity couldn't handle it. So for those like Paul, here it is. So I just thought it was a nice way to handle
That's
it.
fabulous.
And I hoped other people would read it and start listing them more often, but they're not doing it. I'm not noticing any more causes of death. But anyway,
Well, that was
I think
excellent.
Paul had the right idea.
A good call, and I'm glad you're a short-term listener. I hope you become a long-term listener at some point. Ann, thanks. Appreciate
I
it.
remember at the beginning of the opioid crisis when I was still writing a column for the Globe.
I know.
A mother said the obit, and she said that her son had died after a long from a drug overdose after a long battle with opioid addiction. And I thought it was great that she did that. And I remember I called her up, and she was,
Did you?
I drove up to. She was in Salisbury Beach, New Hampshire, and I did a story about her son, and it was great because she talked about how he'd been sober for a long time and just came home to see family over 4th of July and just slipped, and that was that.
Well, it's when
He
people
died.
started dealing with the stigma thing, and it really, apparently, if you read stories, probably
You
yours,
see a lot
it makes a
more.
big difference to people who are suffering.
Well, I almost thought she started, trend is too strong a word, but she started, more and more people identify that people died of an opioid overdose, and I think that's important because
you.
it was an accident. He didn't mean to do it. Anyway, are we out of time here?
We are
time
out
for
of
one
time.
more. We are out of time.
Thank you
I'm
for
sorry.
your calls.
We are done. We have to talk to Jared Bowen now.
We don't have to talk to Jared.
Because he's going to tell us about his morning routine. Did you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning?
And
or 5
he
o'clock
probably
in the morning?
runs 11 miles.
Well, he's a
and
big
then he
runner.
has a protein shake, then meditates for 2 hours.
He's hostile. He's hostile today, Jared.
What do you do,
You're
Jared?
only a quarter right. So I get up at about sometime between 5 and 5:30, and I go running, and then I don't eat. I'm like Marjorie. I don't need to eat until much later on.
Yeah.
But this is why I was thinking. I was listening to you guys talk. I'm running in the morning, running really early in the morning. I've seen multiple wedding proposals.
Really?
All manner of wildlife. I've seen a car crashed inside a building, and I've come across 2 dead bodies over the years running in the morning.
Really? And what'd you do with them?
Well, one state police officer had arrived and had a sheet over the other. Another runner and I arrived at the same time, and the other runner called. That was kind of gross.
So did you keep running?
Well, after what are you going to do after?
So
dead is dead, I guess. Yeah, it's true.
So why the wedding proposals in the morning? I mean, they plan to be out in the dark at 5 o'clock in the morning, or how's that work?
Well, one of them was a little bit later on in the morning, but the other 2 were both runners, I noticed.
Oh.
And they had, I remember seeing all these people crouched behind a bush, and I was trying to figure out what they were doing, and they had coordinated so that all their friends would be there and yell out. I mean, that's always a peril, though. What if she says no, or he says no?
That's true.
Then you're in trouble.
You got to make sure you're going to get a yes there, don't you?
But they both got yeses.
Okay, what's on the show?
Okay. We are going to be talking to Hannah Selinger, who has just written her memoir, Cellar Rat, of my life in the restaurant underbelly. She was in the fine dining in New York, that whole scene, and it was a very ugly scene as she documents in
this is
her
a big book. I've read
memoir.
about this all over the place.
So we'll be talking to her, and then we'll be talking to the director of EFIS, the film we talked about,
great.
the baseball shot film here in Massachusetts, and Eric Antonio about his book of photography, 40 years of music photography for all the great people who have come through town, from Dizzy Gillespie to Madonna.
Fabulous. We'll be listening 3 o'clock sharp. What? 2 o'clock
Jared,
sharp. Sorry.
2 o'clock sharp.
Sorry.
Jared, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jared.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Okay, thank you. We're done. Thanks for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. A couple of announcements, though. And thanks everybody who came down here to the Boston Public Library. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page. Tomorrow we'll be back here live at the Boston Public Library with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrew Cabral, Jared Bowen. We just spoke with him. Naturalist and author Cy Montgomery, who soothes everybody's nerves, and the indigenous filmmakers behind Frontline's latest documentary, Alaska's Vanishing Native Villages. I want a little programming announcement here. Earlier this month, we talked to local business leader Rose Starum, whose company, Rosemart Productions, is organizing the Big Queer Food Fest in Boston. Well, it is running this week through May 4th with all these James Beard Award-winning top chef champions and local talent celebrating LGBTQ plus food and culture. It's supposed to be fantastic. For tickets and info, go to bigqueerfoodfest.com. That's bigqueerfoodfest.com. Do you have something you'd like to say,
I do have an
Jim?
announcement. And I'm going back to Endicott College in Beverly tonight. Last time I went, it was very competitive because you were doing an event with Heather Cox Richardson.
That's right.
Which you thought was superior to
Standing
mine.
room only.
And we talked about our crowds.
No
My
one could
crowd
get
was
in.
much bigger,
We had
actually.
state police
In any
directing
case,
traffic.
Tonight at 6 o'clock at Cleary Hall at Endicott in Beverly, this fabulous panel of experts, I'm going to be moderating about banning cell phones in schools for mental health and wellness reasons. We're going to talk about the why, the how, the what's next. It's really an impressive group of people. It's free. Cleary Hall, Endicott, 6 o'clock tonight.
Well, I hope you get a good crowd, Jim.
I hope so, too.
Okay.
Thank you for supporting the effort.
Okay. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena. Thanks, too, to our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. The Culture Show with Jared Bowen is right after us. No news. We go right for a couple of announcements. Then we go to Jared. You're listening to 89.7 GBH Boston Public Radio. I am Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thanks again for tuning in today.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
And hope you can tune in again tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. It's going to be nice and warm, too.
Trio and the Chamber Orchestra of Europe with Schubert's First Symphony.
Support for WCRB comes from you and the Kendall Square Orchestra, presenting Symphony for Science, a concert of soaring music and uplifting stories that shine a spotlight on healthcare for the homeless. Sunday, May 11th at Symphony Hall. More at symphonyforscience.org.